Good afternoon and welcome everybody. Welcome to the Surveyor Regional meeting in the Otaki District Council's chambers. Only these walls for talk, but this is obviously an iconic building in the heart of Oran, and we're very grateful for the opportunity to move around the region. And today's meeting, of course, is Otaki District's turn to host us, so we're grateful for that, and we will later on in the evening catch up with the councillors so welcome to councillors, welcome to staff, welcome to the media. We really appreciate the interest and the topics on today's agenda. With regards to the camera system here, it is noise activated, so when you speak, the camera will do wonderful things and log on to you whilst you're speaking, so just be mindful of that. And also, is everyone on our turn?
No.
The other thing you're on, it is not only also whole discussion as well. So today, with the agenda, what I want to do is look on this. It's not tightened up with regards to the way. So just very clearly getting the questions initially, and then move to debate. It's just something that we've had that workshop on, and try and put some of those suggestions into practice. So see how we go. We have an apology from Johnson, the chair of the apology secretary. I'll put the motion on the table to say aye.
Aye.
Against carry. There is no public forum. Moving on to confirmation of the agenda. We have the additional item that the report, the delegation's COVID-19 recovery Act 2020 be included in the agenda, and I suggest I comes to item 7.7, so it comes in after the local government conference item. Seconded by Kate. Any discussion? I'll look at the motion, let's vote and say aye. Aye. Against carry. Conflict of interest, just the same reminder, everyone's got that responsibility, you know your responsibilities here, so your hands in that regard. Moving on to the confirmation of minutes, which have been circulated, and these are the minutes from the 24th of February 2021. Marion seconded. Okay. Any discussion? Not the motion, close vote. Against? Carried.
Remember that this is a sound activated system, so you have to speak forward to this thing.
Speakers there and the far end of the table.
And the central.
Okay, moving on to item 7.1. This is the long-term plan, the 2021 31 consultation document is supporting information. This report seeks Council's approval of the consultation document and supplementary information supporting the draft long-term plan. There are 6 attachments with this item, and also we've got the 8 recommendations, of which recommendations into the slide. Mike, welcome, Mike. So, welcome Nick and welcome Mike. We would like to take us through the official with the presentation too, but any other comments in general that you'd like to make to council?
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just quickly go through the recommendations. They are a specific order and we need to follow the recommendation. We take those on as we go and reserve comments on the recommendation. So quickly looking at the recommendations, the first two relate to the audit, the external audit process that we've gone through. We informed the chair when the audit was approaching better, and which basically sets out the basis of the audit that we've gone through and council's responsibility for the formal target. And then that sets up the recommendation which we will do. And it's about if you want to be perfectly clear, where we can have the slide with the first level, we will hold over long time. It's also there. It's also it's critical to us. And that's a clear report. And then moving to 3, that sets up the basis for you to adopt support information with
We're just all going to have to look.
Yeah, so 3 sets you up to then adopt support information so you're looking at then 4 is your draft long-term plan, and importantly, that contains a strategy and your infrastructure strategy. We've got 2 key things that we've got there into it. Allow them to really good strategy. And our restrictions. And then we're going to refer to the local future charges. And we'll be protecting the draft building once the first of the league is the option on the draft. Again, I've got to your education. There's been some changes that we've received from the Office of the General, subsequent to the General going out, and we need to to keep it all up forward, we've got tables and equally, we'll just then.
Nick, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear bits of it. The audio's it's not that great. It was. Can you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, it's not. It's it was better when the microphone got moved closer to Mike, but yeah, it's a little bit difficult to hear. So yeah, the only comments I've got is yeah, Mike, I couldn't actually hear what he'd said, but he'll step you through the recommendations and the process and the last, the changes that have happened to the CD itself since the agenda went out, which is just the final Officer of the Auditor General changes. But apart from that, yeah, any questions, if somebody texts me them, I'll do my best to decipher them and answer them from there.
Yes, certainly, Chair. Look, just quick comment before I ask my question is that as lead councillor through this LTP process, I want to thank Mr. Gardner and Mr. Longley and his team for their guidance through this whole process. It's been much appreciated. But I also want to thank my fellow councillors for their efforts. This has been a long process, but it's been very rewarding to sit there and go through this process with you. And your efforts today have really set a milestone that we've today. We have an LTP consultation document that's ready to go, and it's also a document that's ready to go with an unqualified auditor's report. Thanks for your team here. So I have questions. So I'm going to finish the question. So Mr. Rossler, are you comfortable that we do in fact have a compliant and ready to go consultation document?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Just in relation to the note on the item, the recommendation page table, and the reference to page 33, I'm just checking this. Remove reference to the Yellow-Eyed Penguin initiative. That's because A, money isn't there this year, and B, it's not. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, I just want to check this. And sorry, the page 15, the added additional language is
Further questions?
Councillor Pope, I think the transport.
Michael, question to you and to I look at transport. I keep on saying it's going to be a regional land transport plan by June. And so it's almost like a guesstimate what goes in here on transport, correct? It is a guesstimate, isn't it? Because if that regional land transport plan came forward with buying new buses, okay? I'm talking passenger buses. If it talked about lowering costs in Dunedin, they're not in there. So, in other words, this is a guide, isn't it? We could, if we had to, break it.
Yes. So, Dr. Palmer can probably answer some of the detail around what's provided in transport rather than me. But there is always the opportunity to prepare an annual plan, or if it's a significant change, a change to the long-term plan. So at the moment, what you have is the proposed 10-year plan, but you absolutely can make a change through the annual budgeting processes that we undertake, if you so wish to do that and you think it's appropriate.
Can I have just a further clarification to that? Because in the, and I can't, sorry, not like Kate, I can't reference the page, but in there was a thing about a capital expenditure on transport, and it was to do with a national ticketing system in year 2. You know, I got all excited when I saw the capital expenditure, then I found out what it was for. And so that's what raised my question. There is nothing in here that leads towards have to be extra work, extra budget work next year.
Yes, I guess as you've seen of recent times, we have the business cases that are being prepared.
Yeah.
And we're about to do the next tranche of that, so that's budgeted for.
Yeah.
But any capital spend that comes as a result of an acceptance or an agreement to go forward with those business cases would need to be included into the budget at a later time.
Kate.
Sorry, just again, referring to that same page, I've only just noticed this, and apologies for not earlier. We've got page 18 and 19, which is the options 1, 2 and 3 for Lake Hayes. I'm suggesting that you also need to have page 57, which is the page of you fill in the submission page, because it references option 3, new annual uniform rate. So if we can add in 37, page 37 to that on that page.
Thank you.
Well, I know you just left one in there for us to feel meaningful. My only other question is, in that form, and I did submit this to when we were asked to put in some feedback, on that page 37, which is the format page, when you've got at the bottom, do you have anything further to add in your mind that is on the whole of the plan, I presume, because it's in black looking under a proposal, and I think that when I made a comment, I just want to make sure people can comment on anything in the plan, even though it isn't part of the significance changes that we've consulted on. I'm not quite sure that that was clear in the way that that's laid out. I'm not sure that anyone else shares my concerns, but we are asking for submissions on anything rather than just on those proposals that we have to consult on, I think. Am I correct in that?
My observation, having managed many submission processes and read many submissions, is people that want to say something about other bits of our business, saying anything about our business, they do.
Okay, great.
and they complain about the lack of space, and they
Yes.
add and they staple things to it when it's a manual submission.
Well, I think-
Online is the problem.
Well, and to that end, I was also going to wonder why we didn't say add another page if necessary.
And they do. We get these.
I'm presuming, because of what else we do here, that things like the levels of service performance indicator things are only part of the story of what we do. It's sort of not the suggestion. It feels like a wee bit in the document is that that's what we're measuring, but it isn't all we measure, is it? There's a whole lot of other things. It's just sort of some of our indicators and measurements that would help us understand whether we're achieving what we want to achieve. Not all of them, as it were.
Yes, correct. Insofar as in the draft plan that you have in front of you, the measures, the level of service statements measures the targets are what you see coming through in your quarterly report from 1 July. And yes, you're right, beneath that there's there's the detail of the organisation has to, for them just to manage things to happen.
Because we wouldn't want
Yeah.
people to assume that we thought if we met those targets that there'd be nothing else that, we were doing really well and there's nothing else that mattered. They're only sort of one way of publicly showing that we're achieving.
In an important way, I suggest, because it's public and it's all part of the transparency that's required under the LGA. So, you're right,
But the duck will be
but-
paddling underneath the water in a lot of other ways too.
And just thinking back to the council workshop on that, audit will be, so we've taken your feedback on the measures in the draft plan, and audit will have some more feedback leading into final adoption. So there'll be an opportunity in May for you to come back and fine tune some of those things, because I know you have some expectations with some of that. So there's still some wiggle room there.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, I'll go to Kevin in a 2 secs, but I imagine, Mike, if we have the debate and then we just deal with each individual recommendation one by one, that's really what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So, Chair of Finance, Kevin, we're in your hands.
Yeah,
One
so
of the chairs.
Oh, sorry.
co-chair.
It's
Co-chair.
We're in
Co-chair
the
of
hands of
finance.
the two co-chairs of Finance.
Well
I'll
said.
go to you second, Hilary. Sorry.
Kevin speaks for us, but
I was just going to seek permission to do that, Councillor Kelvin. Look, so today is the beginning of a new phase for the 2021-31 long-term plan. It's the public consultation phase. No formal decisions have been made or set in concrete. We now go to our public to seek their views and to seek their direction. And we began in middle of last year formulating a long-term plan in this consultation group document. And as a group, we recognise that the ORC needs to step up to do its statutory duties and meet the demands of central government, and we need to step up to support our communities. To perform, we need to perform, and we need to have that performance. We actually need to resource our CE and her team. So this is about resourcing our CE, giving her teams the confidence to go ahead and do what we need to do. It certainly is, to me, it is an exciting phase of this process, and we will finally be able to get the feedback that we wish from our communities. So with that in mind, I'd like to move the first recommendation and would seek a second for that.
Second by Carmen. Further speakers, Hilary.
no, I think my co-chair has admirably described the situation.
Further speakers on recommendation, or speaking to all the recommendations, we're just dealing with this first recommendation now, but speakers on all of the LTP consultation document. Michael.
Thank you, Andrew. Yes, this is a remarkable document in the history of the Otago Regional Council, and a remarkable document in terms of percentage rate rise, probably the history of local government since its reorganisation in 1989. I wouldn't mind betting that this might just be the largest percentage rate rise in a year that has ever happened in local government. Sounds horrendous, and in some ways it is, or the causes of. The first cause is our own past mismanagement, which we cannot shrug from. The ORC didn't do its job in the past and is running to catch up and spending a large sum of money to do things that we have been properly called on. But the second is because we are now essentially, like all regional councils in New Zealand, at the behest of central government dictate and directive. And the extent of that is as significant as I have seen in my time in politics, and certainly since the reorganisation of local government. And I fear, and I need to express that fear to this table, that may become the new norm, where regional councils and indeed territorial authorities have less and less control of their organisations and of their communities. And that it is already happening, I anticipate, with the Three Waters reform, which has so many unanswered questions, but may strip from many territorial authorities their reason for being. So I need to flag that because this is a huge rate rise in percentage terms, and our community has every right to want to know why. And we have got to be honest and upfront, open and transparent with the rationale and the reasons for that occurring. I have very little doubt, because of the large numbers involved in terms of percentage, but not in actual dollar terms, that there will be considerable national political and media interest on this. And the finger may well be pointed in our direction that we have done something wrong. But I will, as a former member of a district health board, used to being elected but impotent, send all my colleagues a warning. And that is that district health boards were eventually run from Wellington at the dictate of the Ministry of Health. And elected members had little to no say in what actually happened with health and health services in their communities. We need to be much more vigilant, much more political, much more direct, much more questioning about some of the directives that are being sent our way, and also be prepared to resist if we find that they are not in the best interest of our region or its ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Further speakers, just to be clear, we're having the debate on all the recommendations from 1 to 8, just so everyone understands. That's what we're up to. Okay, further speakers, Brian and Kate.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you to staff and everybody involved in terms of the LTP. There's been a lot of work and some positive progress. I support the tenor of the LTP. Obviously, as the previous speakers have said, there's a significant rate rise, but at the end of the day, we've got some significant environmental challenges to be addressed, and we need a significant and an appropriate budget to address it. However, I will make the point that, you know, our funding and costs are now in the order of $100 million, where with that comes a responsibility to actually achieve some real outcomes on the ground. As an organisation, ideally, we move away from a focus on providing good and diligent reports to actually getting outcomes on the ground. So a reduction in rabbits, an improvement in water quality in our streams, that is what our community is expecting with this additional expenditure. It seems to me, you know, there are certain things that we're doing well. We're doing well with our improvements in policy. We're doing well with our improvements in regulatory. But we need to do equally as well in terms of building on science and our interface with our community. In relation to science, you know, there's some, as an organisation, we need to continue to evolve. We need to, for example, 2 weeks ago with our groundwater report, significant report, we weren't 100% sure what we were going to do with that information. We're doing positive things. We talked about funding of the Otago Catchment Group, you know, $200,000, but at the end of the day, it's only 0.2% of our new budget if the community agrees to it. And you've heard my frustration in terms of this organisation. We're quick to establish financial targets, but we're, in my view, we're slow at establishing appropriate environmental targets. So in terms of the community will come back to us and tell us their thoughts. In terms of my thoughts, I can only support this on the basis that this organisation continues to evolve, because we've got a hell of a responsibility now where we've risen up, the community will be starting to recognise what we're doing, and we need to deliver on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Kate.
Thank you, and to the staff, it's been a substantial piece of work and I appreciate it. I mean, we're having to deliver it on many, for many reasons on many fronts, and it must be exceedingly challenging to all the teams, so thank you. What I am frustrated with though, as bad as the headlines may sound to some, what we're doing is we're really now asking you for your previous savings because we just haven't been investing in the areas we need to do. But in that process, we've also cut some spending, and I'm really clear about the yellow-eyed penguins. And while it was a 3-year contract, they had every aspiration that they might have another 3, and they're doing work that we haven't been in that space to do. We are the regional councils have. With Cozy Homes, we've dropped theirs, and we've reduced our expenditure on air projects because we just had to juggle things. When I'm out and about, and I spent a wonderful time in a couple of AMP shows recently talking to people. River management and our infrastructure strategy, which we signed off for consultation last week, is the area that a lot of farmers are keen to see us do more investment in as well. And so what I really want to encourage with this, while it may seem, as the headline news, a lot of money, that it is about consultation, but it is necessary that we hear also what those other projects are or aims of the community are, because I'm not sure that we have quite heard enough about those things like river management that people are keenly aware of, and the cost that it happens if we don't do that well. I know that we've invested a lot of staff in that area, which is grateful, and they've been well received on the ground. But it's the diggers and doing some of the gravel movements and the replantings and the riparian work that's really required to a lot of those people. And I think we've got a light touch in there at the moment. So I think it's just a line in the sand at the moment for the purposes of consultation, and where that might take us will only be reflected in the quality and the number of submissions we get. And I really hope that those people that come up to us at shows or ring us and will engage in this process. It's a tortuous one. I think the graphs and the work that the staff have done to portray what's happening is great, but I think getting to that next level and detail requires all of us to be out there making sure that people do have that chance to be heard. I look forward to it.
Thank you. Further speakers? Marion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, first of all, thank the staff for what I think is a very attractive and clear consultation document. It really has been superb. But I also want to make very clear that our to-do list is huge. And we've had to delay some work that I'd like to have seen us go on with. And one of them is, of course, the air plan. Land and water, we're governed by national policy statements and national environment standards, and always have been since the beginning of the Resource Management Act. It's not new that national governments, a central government sets standards. Okay, biodiversity has been new for us, and the work that we've got to do here. We've had biodiversity officers, but the ramping up that we to do in this area is very good. Safety and resilience comes in particularly because with climate change are going to come more floods. We only have to look to New South Wales again right at the moment, but we look at our own area, and also coastal erosion. Transport, which is beginning to be a bugbear of mine, is also about including in our work an understanding of our responsibility at regional level for mitigating the emissions, the greenhouse gas emissions, and carbon being a senior one of that. Regional leadership, which no one has talked about very much, is also important, because in that's going to be how we're going to manage climate change to a certain degree, and also the spatial plans. We saw an example of that from Queenstown, but that's being asked for by government at a national level. Our relationship to central government isn't a new one. It is there under the Resource Management Act. It will continue to be there. And when we don't pull our weight, the government moves in, as it has done on freshwater. On the other hand, I'll be asking government, as a council will, I imagine, that when we get to the really costly end of transport and the capital costs of changing from diesel to some other kind of form of energy buses, we'll be asking for some help at that stage. So it's a two-way thing. We do our job. We get used. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Michael.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'll take the opportunity to do two things. One is to acknowledge what Councillor Laws has to say. I don't often have the chance to agree with Michael, and this is one of them, so I want to take it. I think he was pretty much on the button with his opening comments in this debate, and he's made them before, and I've said quite less. But it is a councillor who's sat around this table for longer than me, I think. I take my share of the responsibility for the fact that the Otago Regional Council is catching up. There's no doubt about that. We prided ourselves for far too long on being tight, if not miserly, if not sometimes minimalist. And the region is now paying the price for that. I, as an elected representative of people, regret that. we should have been more progressive starting some time back. But for whatever reason, we have been the organisation we have been too small and not sufficiently active. And those days are past. And I'm happy about that. I think we're now facing up to pretty much all of our responsibilities, give or take points that have been made by most recent speakers about things that we have deliberately have had not to do, such as the air plan. That is urgent, I would say. Coastal plan, another one, should be working on. But you can't do everything. And our ratepayers may well say to us, hey, you're taking on far too much, drop that, and do less of that. And we have to listen, and we will listen to the advice that they give us through this consultation document. The second thing I want to say, Mr. Chairman, if you'll allow me, is to pay a tribute to our Chief Executive. I think Sarah has been outstanding for 12 months, faced by all this incredibly increasing pressure to do more, to go back and start again, to appoint more staff, and look at the staff she's appointed. Never been so proud of the people that we employ, or I should say, sorry, Sarah employs. And that has brought additional pressures of finding more accommodation, more money from God knows where. Well, we do know where now. But I think Sarah has been magnificent in the way in which she has met the pressure. Lord knows it must have been severe at times. Managed the organisation through to the point where we're poised now to do a great deal more and do a great deal better. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further speaker, Hillary.
I would just like to, well, I'd like to endorse everything people have said up till now, really, but on top of that, I would like to put my personal promise to the ratepayers that this money that is being proposed in this plan will be, as far as we can do, as far as I can do, spent wisely and in the most efficient and economical way it can be. So we've got outlines in this plan about what things will cost and what we want to do. And where at all possible, we're going to turn over the stones and look at every dollar that's being spent and make sure that those dollars are achieving what we have told you in this plan that we are trying to achieve. And so to get in behind that and make sure that that money is being spent towards the goals we have outlined in this plan and any change goals that will be made during the course of this consultation. And that's my pledge, and I think it's probably the intent of the other councillors around the table today as well.
Yes.
To the ratepayers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further speakers, Carmen.
Thank you. I see Otago Regional Council's attempt to balance Otago's needs as a community with those projects we must now undertake. We require the tools to deliver the environmental gains, and we can look to you, Mrs. Gardner, and your staff to do that. But at the same time, there's another cost that must be factored into this. And I see it as the wage packet and the land users who will be the hardest hit. So I urge all our ratepayers to read your consultation document and to
Thanks, Carmen. Any further speakers? Gary.
Thank you. Yeah, for me, I appreciate the comments of Councillor Dika talking about his time here and feeling as though he should have some responsibility. But to me, the goalposts have changed substantially. Central government are playing such a part in what we are required to do. I desperately hope that central government's vision, where we are intended or required to get to, is actually the best for Otago. We are going to ask a massive increase of our rates from our ratepayers. And it's not only in year 1, it's in year 2, and it's in year 3 as well. This is a total game-changing position, and I hope that we see value for money out of it. There's a couple of real key points I'm very concerned about, that is the suggestion around Lake Hayes, and we're improving these 2 or 3 situations we have around Otago that are an urgent need, that the precedent set by targeting that close-knit community, I think is very unfair. And I hope they speak up, and I hope all of Otago speaks up around how we deal with this and other areas that we must manage. I'm really concerned that air quality has been parked. We have issues to sort there. So, but overall now, I think it's time that what we have done, which is commendable to the staff, I think we've got a good document in place, get it out to the community and let them have it safe.
Thank you, Alexa.
I agree with you on Lake Hayes entirely. I think that sets a dreadful precedent for cleaning up waterways around the region, but these are things that we'll discuss as it goes on. I haven't said much about this document because we are here. OAG said it's good to go. I don't think it's great. I think it's average. I don't think it's clear. But I do hope that we can get people to engage, and I do hope people take preferred options with a grain of salt and think it through for themselves and come back to us.
Thanks, Alexa. My comments, firstly, just want to echo a number of councillors, pretty much all of you have acknowledged the staff contribution. This organisation has been in a state of transition, and certainly since Sarah's come on board, I'm not 100% sure whether Sarah realised how much work had to be done to turn the ship around. And we're not there yet, but we're still in this transitional phase. So we're on a journey, and it's an exciting journey, and it's good to be involved. But there are consequences to change, and obviously the requirement to have a larger budget is one of those consequences, and the expectations from the community and clearly the mandatory requirements from central government have meant that we've got to at least consider a significantly larger chunk for our budget to deal with what I would describe as core essential services that this organisation needs to deal with. And if you look at our increase in budget for the 21-22 year, the extra 20 million spend, half of that amount is in the environment area. So that there's a big focus in the core essential service area. And I think the other thing the organisation is moving towards, and Sarah recently said this in the Otago Daily Times about the organisation being more proactive, responsive, engaged. And also I think from a governance point of view, we want to show greater leadership in the challenges that the region have. And Marion's talked about the climate change challenge and the urban development responsibilities that we now carry once again, a mandatory requirement to work with the likes of Queenstown Lakes District Council and Dunedin City Council to develop spatial plans for those areas. So, things have certainly changed. So, once again, thank you for your comments. We look forward to hearing back from the community, because at the end of the day, as elected representatives, we are their voices. So it's really important that they make the most of the opportunity and inform us with their views, so we can make the next step when we settle on a plan to take us forward over the next decade. Right, a reply, Kevin.
Yes, certainly, Chair. There's a consistent desire around the table at the moment, and I see that growing, that we all want the best environmental outcomes for Otago. And I firmly believe if we look at the direction of our long-term plan, that we will actually deliver that outcome. I just go to page, and I think it's on page 142, and it's mentioned a couple of times, which is our financial strategy principles. And I think that really comes in now. We are talking significant, we are talking big numbers, but we are going to deliver, and that will be the key metric that will be measured by at the end of the day. So we talk about prudence, fairness, value for money, and transparency. And just under value for money, we have council will ensure that all expenditure provides the best possible value for money in terms of impact and effectiveness. So we get this money, we need to give the impact that we're desiring, that our community is desiring, and we must ensure that it is effective. We are increasing our delivery, but we need to deliver a strong, sustainable environmental outcomes for Otago. We need to resource our CE and her team. Our challenge, not only the governors, but Team ORC, our challenge will be to make sure we actually deliver the best possible environment for Otago. With that, I close, sir, and ask that we put the motion.
Thank you very much. And just reminding everybody, we will deal with these recommendations one by one. So the first one approves the signing of the audit representation letter by the chair. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. The second one, and correct me if I'm wrong with the tweak to this one, Mike, notes the independent auditor's report on the have your say of our future 21 to 31 long-term plan consultation document will be provided following the receipt of the audit representation letter and council approval of the consultation document.
Yes.
Okay. I'll put recommendation 2, all those, sorry. Okay.
So I think, are you moving and seconding them all?
Oh, sorry. No, okay, we'll go back to Kevin. Recommendation 2, sorry.
Yeah.
Moved, Kevin, seconded, Carmen.
Kevin liked to move
balance off altogether.
If we're
more efficient.
I'm very comfortable to do that, and I would have done it at the start of the meeting, but it has been very good to have a discussion on it. And so I would add that move to items 2, 3, recommendations 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yep. Yes, thank you.
With the appropriate amendments supplied by Mr. Rossler.
And just on 8, there was also the suggestion by Kate, or that page 37 required the option 3 for Lake Hayes included in that table.
Comfortable with that.
Excellent. So, thank you, Michael. I'll still put them one by one, okay? Okay, we're good to go?
Yep.
So I'll put recommendation 2. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Recommendation 3. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Recommendation 4. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Recommendation 5. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Recommendation 6. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Recommendation 7. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Recommendation 8. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Excellent. Thank you very much, team. Now, a special welcome to Waitaki District Council Mayor and Deputy Mayor. Nice to have you here.
That's what's coming.
Look, just on behalf of us all, it's a bit unconventional just breaking into the agenda, but it's a special day to be here in the Waitaki District and to be in this iconic building. And so we really appreciate the opportunity to obviously move around the region, but in this case, be in the Waitaki District. So on behalf of us all, thank you very much. And we'll catch up later in the day. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 7.2. This is the Port Otago Constitution. I assume Nick is going to comment on this via Zoom. So essentially the report is for council to approve the Constitution of Port Otago Limited and the revised guidelines for the appointment of directors of Port Otago. The residency requirement was included in the approved guideline, and the revised constitution was approved by council on the 30th of September 2020. The constitution was submitted for approval by the Ministry of Transport, who requested that the residency requirement is included in the constitution. Nick, is there anything else you would like to add?
No, hopefully you can hear me. The audio is good now, so I can hear all of you. Yeah, that sums it up. Obviously, if the minister hadn't have have asked for an amendment, council had already approved the constitution. So if the minister accepted it as it was, it would have just gone through, and that would have been the end of it. With this change needing to be made, we now need to bring the constitution back to you as council to approve it. It's substantially the same. Previously, we had exactly the same clause in the guideline, which was sitting outside of the constitution. So now that's being put back into the constitution, and the guideline being amended to reflect that. So all we're looking for now is, assuming council's comfortable with that, we recommend that you approve the constitution as is, and then the port can file that with the Companies Office, and that will be the new constitution that's in place.
Excellent, thank you. I'll just go to questions first. Sorry, Hilary.
I haven't got a question.
Oh, okay, Michael.
No, I haven't got a question either.
Okay, we'll go back to Hilary. Oh, you've got a question, Kate? Beg your pardon.
It's just a pedantry. I'm sorry. The constitution, the format that I've got, and the motion says as attached. The order I've got is the cover page, and then what I think should be the last page, and I think because of that. And has anyone else got that issue?
This is on diligent.
Yes. So it's just because only because once the constitution attached is the wording on the report. So if you go to the front page, and the second page is actually the last page. And I'm sorry, but as long as it's not the one attached, is all I'm saying. The motion that has been put says attached.
You just want to remove it.
So
Just
remove the word attached.
Yeah, sorry, not the word proposed. Yeah, which I understand where it's going. Sorry.
And that's for both recommendation 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense of 3 as well.
You want to put proposed constitution?
Okay.
Yeah, it's just.
Do you want to consider attached proposed?
It's what he's got to think. Sorry.
Okay. So the words that attached have been removed, and proposed has been placed in both recommendation 2 and 3. Thank you for that. Okay,
Well,
that's the second time you've put us on track. Thank you, Hilary.
I'd like to move these 3.
And have the second by Kevin. Any discussion? Michael.
I just want to make a point that we're actually discussing this at all, because the reason we are is because, in a funny sort of way, governance objectives got frustrated. There was a discussion, you'll remember it, and I raised it around resident members of the council, and how there was the danger that we would have a majority of directors who did not reside, not just in Otago, but dear Lord, not just in New Zealand. And there was a general feeling around this table that that would be not a good thing. And so somewhere along the line, people decided to get clever and say, oh, we'll just ignore that. And now the Ministry of Transport, or the Minister of Transport's quite rightly said, no, that would be wrong. You put it back. You put that in there. And that's why we're discussing this issue today. So I just wanted to clarify that, because the next time we say as a governance team, this would be quite a good idea and we think this should happen, and somebody decides to get cute and smart, we should say, stop being cute and smart. And we wouldn't be having to waste our time with this issue again. I'm making that point because governance did have a view. And that view was frustrated, and now, thank God, the Minister of Transport has said, no, that goes in.
Thank you. Sarah, was there something you want to
Well, all I was going to clarify is that in paragraph 4 of your report, it says the approved constitution excluded a residency clause as
Yes,
it was
it did.
included in the guidelines. Yes, but my point is that it was approved here at council.
No, but we said, no, it was put to us. I remember that conversation. We said, we want them to be resident. And they said, listen, we can take it out and deal with it this way. But it was originally going to be part of the constitution. The advice that we got, Nick's sitting there, the advice that we got was, well, you can actually do that by putting in the guidelines.
Anyway, it's now in the constitution, so.
Yes, and delightfully, I'm delighted that it is.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Hillary.
Just briefly, I echo those thoughts partly that there is a difference between putting them in the Constitution and putting them in guidelines. And if they're in the Constitution, then some lawyers sooner or later will go and have a look at the Constitution if they want to check that something needs to happen. And they'll just find it there and then they'll give us advice about that it's there. And since on the whole, from a legal point of view, it would be really difficult, if not impossible, often to have directors and other things outside the country. We've got no control of them, we've got all sorts of issues. And through our general legal system, we don't like people in charge of things here that aren't here, that gets in the way of some of those sorts of things. So shifting it out of the guidelines back into the necessities rather than the suggestions is a really good thing. So.
I agree.
Thank you. Any further speakers? If not, you're comfortable that we deal with the 3 recommendations all together, moved by Michael Law, seconded by Hillary. Up to 3, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye. I think I moved into that. Councillor. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, that was a switching order. Yes. Moved by Hillary, seconded by Kevin. I'll put the 3 recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Nick. Moving on to item 7.3. This is the Otago Regional Council's submission on Climate Change Commission's report. Welcome to Gwyneth. This report is to request council to approve a.
We have Warren.
We've also got Warren and Anne on Zoom. Welcome both.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
This report is to request council to approve the submission from the Otago Regional Council to Hei Poi, I believe, Poi Orangi, the Climate Change Commission 2021 draft advice for consultation document. I'll just finish what remember the workshop was held on the 9th of March and submission closed on the 28th of March.
Yes.
That's what we're dealing with. Marion?
Just a quick clarification. Since I'm making a personal submission on this, shall I pull back from the table?
In my opening comments about conflicts of interest, I expect individual councillors to know when to move back from the table. So we note that and it will be in the minutes. Thanks, Marion. Sorry, we're dealing with Anne or Warren?
Yes.
Which one?
And did you want to do a quick introduction?
I mean, the introduction really is that we prepared the paper to try and reflect what we heard, and we're interested to hear Beverly's response, basically.
Thank you. And I know Alexa had circulated an email very much sort of challenging the fullness of the submission, particularly picking up on what council has already committed to do in the space. I'm not sure whether, Alexa, you've got something there that you were going to speak to or circulated to Di.
Now, no further introduction. I think we need to go back to drawing board on this. I don't believe the submission reflects our direction. I don't think it reflects our strategic directions as a council or our community aspirations. And I don't believe it is responding with integrity and authenticity to the work of the Commission. The Commission's asked us for specific feedback on areas that outline what they want feedback on, areas like our views on the budgets they're setting, whether or not they have the balance right and allocations of costs to the current generation and then to the future generations, what we think of the nationally determined contributions, and other questions that seek our engagement and our opinion on the impacts on several sectors in our region. And that includes the farming sectors, the forestry sectors, the urban sectors. But we've chosen to not engage and instead express concerns about implementation. And we haven't been asked about that. We've even offered an opinion that appalled me, that we should communicate clearly how New Zealanders might contribute to positive solutions as individuals. we're beyond this. We note that it's important that our communities are led by well-informed processes that ensure that they can continue to prosper, but we're not prepared to offer any input on what we think about what those processes might be, or the budgets, or how they could be implemented. Now, this is particularly relevant today as we sit here and, slap ourselves on the back for doing a long-term plan that finally gets us on with the job. And here we go. We're talking about a progressive LTP, and here we go, not facing this climate change responsibility at all, and that really bothers me. Just heard from Councillor Laws about how ORC has got itself in a position of being at the behest of central government. He was talking about our LTP, but it is equally valid here. If we don't engage and think about these things, how they'll impact on our farmers and people and our future generations, then we'll allow the budgets and series of those 3 5-year plans to be foisted on us. And at that point, we'll get ourselves all upset, and a few years later, we'll get into it as we're finally forced to, and then sit here self-flagellating over about not having done something earlier. It would be easy for us to avoid that by engaging now. I know we've supported the general direction of the Commission, but we have not given them the benefit of our knowledge of our region, and we should do that. It's what we've been asked to do. And it's our responsibility to inform that Commission of our position, to answer the questions that they've asked of us, and to be quick smart about it, given that the submissions close on Monday. In the email that I circulated, I also included the Waikato Regional Council submission, which is very detailed and has some really good direction for the Commission, and I think we should do something.
So, thank you. Just a question for Sarah. If the council were of a mind to ask for a more full submission, particularly picking up on aspects that we are committed to in a strategic sense. I mean, how realistic in the time frame that we've got, Sarah, to be able to manage to update the submission that we've currently got in front of us?
Obviously, there's a limited amount of time, and the staff are not dedicated to climate change work, so to speak, so it's an addition. I'm sure that we could do something, but I think we'd have to be realistic about what that might be. And I also think you would need to think about how you would enable a new submission to be approved such that we weren't having to come back to a council meeting.
So if the amendments or the changes, Gwyneth, I'll come to you in a minute. If the changes were very much aligned with our current policy and strategic position, etc., I would think today we will need to send that message via a motion that clearly makes it crystal clear to staff what we're asking for. So I think that's your point, and also the fact we need to decide today, simply because of the time frame, we haven't got another opportunity between now and the 28th.
Yes, I think that's right. As staff have said, they felt that the submission that they prepared reflected the views that they were given when we discussed this. So what you would be now asking for, I believe, would be a shift in what was discussed. So I think it would just be a matter of everybody having a bit of patience and a bit of forgiveness around how much can be achieved given we've got a short time frame.
Thank you. I've got a Brian and then Michael.
Just a bit of, I guess, extra information in terms of clarification. So some of the submissions that Alex referred to, say from Waikato, are coming from regional councils that have already completed their regional inventory, which, as you're aware, we have to complete sort of, in the coming months.
Right.
They have dedicated climate action committees in place. You don't have. What I'm hinting at is they've also got a publicly documented policy position. So So they're, I guess, councils who are much further along the journey than us, particularly when it comes to climate change.
And there's my point.
Well,
But we don't, we
So
haven't
far
done
behind
it.
the
Gotta go to this, okay.
we're not there.
Thanks.
So we can do it to the format if that's what you're after, but you won't see a level of in-depth analysis that you see from other councils because we just haven't as the council.
I believe that if it's a slightly fuller submission that covers our current position, I think that's, well, I can't speak for everyone, but I imagine that we may be well comfortable with that. Brian and then
Yeah.
Michael.
I didn't necessarily take this as a criticism of what the staff have done. It was more the stance that surely we can say some other things that we believe that will assist. At the end of the day, it's like anything. We do a submission, we do work on the basis of the information we've got at hand. It doesn't mean we let our environment deteriorate, we just act on the basis. And there are some basic principles that I think this council has got its head around. My suggestion, Mr. Chair, would be that, you know, I would have thought like a paragraph. Alexa's already come up with some words that simply say, like the key one, me, from my perspective, is to support budgets and targets that align with the Paris Accord. And that seems a reasonable sort of approach. My suggestion would be that staff just take some time out to work with one or two councillors, including Alexa, and, you know, like it's a couple-hour project and get it done and so forth. But as opposed to letting it lie where it is, this is an important topic. We've always got it. We've always got reason. Look, we're now a $100 million organisation. If our community wants us to be, if they go through that process of consultation, surely we can get our climate change submission a little bit more in tune, as opposed to, oh, we haven't quite got there, we can't comment.
What I'll be looking for is a motion.
I'll put a motion. I'll move a motion that staff work with two councillors, and one of them is Alexa. And I don't know, you know, but there may be somebody else to just modify appropriately the submission.
Yeah, I think we need to be really, really careful with the wording, but just
in that strategic approach.
Yeah, when I say I'm looking for a motion, just I will have the questions that councillors have, and what I'll be looking for is something that encapsulates particularly around what we've committed to as an organisation, rather than reaching out into the deeper waters of perhaps a policy that may or may not be adopted by this organisation going forward. So that's all I'm saying. Okay. Michael Laws.
I have put a motion.
Yeah, I know, but just hold. I want you to hold that thought, please.
Well, we're not. I mean, at our last workshop, and I don't know if I can refer to that without breaking confidence, but I'm sure I can. We decided that we weren't there yet, pretty much what Gwyneth just said, in terms of having any information that we could readily apply that would be of any use or benefit at this stage, to the Climate Change Commission. Now, we're not there yet in terms of information, research, science, and basic data. That's how far we're not anywhere. And this is the first opportunity of what is expected to be a ceaseless round of consultation almost. We're a long, long way from anything that the Climate Change Commission is proposing. This is just in actual fact, to be perfectly honest with you, this is pretty much this is off the top of our heads exercise from the Climate Change Commission. And they're putting some ideas out there just to see which kites fly and which ones fall to the ground. And they admit that themselves in their consultation document. They're saying, yeah, we don't actually have all the information. We don't even know what the ALC is properly at the moment. We haven't got any clue how this will affect you guys. So I think, Brian, for the staff to work with Alexa to appropriately modify the submission would be not only premature, but it would be a bit like sort of letting you, Brian, go to the Rainbow Confectionery shop tonight after 6 o'clock and say, go for your life. I know you were thinking of going there. Go for your life. And don't bother about, you know, what you're going to pick up or let anybody else know, because we don't care. We'll just send us the bill in the morning. And yes, see, and that's why I don't think it's a very good idea. Listen, we should endorse the submission the way it is. This isn't going to be our only submission. Alexa, set up a working party. Happy to join with you on that one. We need to do a lot more work on that. We can't make an intelligible, informed, educated, aware submission at the moment on what we know and what we don't know. We haven't even had that discussion around our council table. We haven't had that discussion with our community. So I'm happy for it to go along the way of the line. And can I just say to Councillor Forbes, to Alexa, I don't expect this to be the end of it by any shape at all.
Thank you. Hilary.
I think we've, I'm sure, inadvertently put our staff in an impossible position.
Sure do.
We've started off by requiring them to break confidence about what happens in a workshop. We've gone on from that by setting them up for the position where they're talking about us making agreements in a workshop and agreed outcomes and things, which of course we can't do. Workshops don't make any decisions or make any agreements or do any of those things. But we have set our staff up to do these things that we can't do. That's not how our workshop process works. But I do have a question here, which is that I think that Gwyneth was saying that it would be possible for the staff to reposition, if that's not the word I'm really wanting, but to put the staff submission into the format of the questions that were asked. And so answer the questions that were asked with the knowledge that the staff have about what we actually have in our papers. Is that it?
So that's right, we can follow the direct format, but as I reflected, it won't be the level of analysis or
but that's an option of something you could do without us asking the staff to do anything that is either outside what we have already agreed.
And can we just have one speaker at a time, please? Hilary.
Or is asking too much for the staff and the limited time they have available.
Yes, so we would be taking our understanding of the direction we took from the workshop and what's in this paper and any other information that's provided today, and we would fill it out in this format of questions, as opposed to, I guess, the current format, which is not question by question.
So I would foreshadow that as a way forward.
Gary.
Totally agree with Councillor Laws. Completely understand your passion and concern with this and desire for a more specific submission. But when we look at, we don't have our inventory, we don't have a clear position for Otago and this council. It's really unfair on the staff to have to do something any more specific. We have so much unknown. Otago is different to the rest of the region. We have direct conflict when it comes to country national direction, plant more trees, and we have issues in this region about areas very real concern about properties being bought for planting trees. So we've got issues to resolve in our position. So I support the submission as it is in its generic form. There is, I think, a typo I can highlight on clause 1.11 where it says ensure they can continue to prosper over during the
During.
Thank you.
Spotting. Well done. Can I take it, one of your comments in response to Hilary, that the formatting is going to be dealt with regardless of what we say today?
Not necessarily, no, because
okay.
I guess what I'm, yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. Sorry. Alexa.
I am wondering if I think that if we follow the format that we've been given, we actually can answer a lot of the questions, countering Gary and Michael there. The 6 big issues, do we agree with the pace of change that they're suggesting? How do we feel about the budgets in terms of our agricultural and forestry sectors? A lot of these things are about our opinion with the knowledge and strategic direction we have now. They're not asking us for a whole pile of information that we may or may not have gathered. We can answer those questions, and if we follow those, instead of just saying things like we don't have enough information, well, nor does the Commission, nor does anyone. And to think that we can suggest that individuals take the responsibility themselves rather than councils do anything, that's what we've suggested in the last paragraph of our submission. Let's please not do that. And we have a format here. We don't have to answer all the questions. We can go through the 6 big issues, and then we can go into more detail if we have it. We can say that the emissions budgets are too ambitious, about right, not ambitious enough, or don't know. We're not asking for a whole pile of stuff.
So.
I just want to.
And I have a motion that I've sent through to Liz.
Okay.
I should just clarify, when I say with the information we have, as I understand it, is where we have clear council policy on something, we would use that. Where we have clear data analysis, we would use that. But if we don't have a clear council position on it, then we wouldn't be making the same.
Perfect.
That's fair enough. Yes.
Yeah.
Understand that.
Just a question.
Okay, give it.
So just in response to that, so in those, for instance, the 6 topics, your answer to that in that format may possibly be not applicable.
If we don't have a council position on it, then
Well,
we don't have that.
So
ORC doesn't have a position on it.
Thank you. Okay.
Working just on the document, I want to ask one question on it, because I thought from the long-term plan we were going to a different place, and in at 1.9 you talk about including climate change adaptation and mitigation, and could also have a role in evaluating co-benefit outcomes as well. I had thought we might be at the point of coordinating some of those co-benefit outcomes, which is slightly more doing than consideration, given the money we're putting in biodiversity and the knowledge in there. And I'm just wondering, I don't mind evaluating as long as we're also possibly coordinating stuff. Do you think we're going to have that capacity given we're putting on more money to rural areas and biodiversity people?
I think where we're going with evaluations, I don't think even that's been established. So we have it through our RPS, but as I understand it at a national level, this commission is not necessarily going to address trade-offs between various environmental outcomes. Possibly a policy question for central government, but I guess what we're saying in the submission that the regional councils have a role because of the way they're situated. Want to add and coordinating.
It's just I think I have to read 1.12 several times to try and make sense. I think I did once, but that's an awkward sentence. The first part, I think I'm just saying that it's one of the changes. I find this really fraught, and I'm just talking to what has just been suggested, that we all know what we think about forestry and various other things. I don't have clear idea about us making a decision on where we wouldn't want forestry, and I know that I've had a complaint about very much that. I know that in the Kapanuis they've got that issue. I have that issue in the tussock lands being sprayed out this week in Otago because they can. For forestry, there are places where I don't think that we are around the table of any consensus about where those forestries could be, especially in waterfall catchments. So as much as I wish we'd had that time to collaborate and to do that stuff, I have a concern that if we delegated this out, we're going to leave the councillors in the hideous position as we leave the staff trying to work out what we actually have agreed, which is difficult. I come back to the discussions we've had in the past. I don't think we've put enough resources into understanding our climate change position early enough. That is where we're at. It's been fraught getting that stuff, and I appreciate the resources are limited to do it. And maybe, yeah, it is where we're at. I just don't think we are potentially a consensus position of knowing where we stand on all issues, answer all the questions.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we're at the beginning of this journey. Waikato Regional Council, obviously, further down the track. So we're just still learning to walk, really. I'm going to go back to Anne. You've heard the discussion, Anne. Is there anything that you would like to share with us at this stage? And then we're going to go to Alexa, who has a proposed motion to add to the three existing ones.
Well, in terms of the actual format of the response, there were a number of consultation questions around the principles, the emission budgets, and some enabling recommendations. There is nothing in none of those that we would do that would do anything other than support, basically. I mean, we did discuss it as a group whether we should actually structure our response according to consultation questions, but it pretty much would read, we support the direction of, you know, the principles, we support the idea of emission budgets, we support the enabling recommendations, or we are putting the position that the council would be supporting those. We can do that, and very happy to do that, but that it doesn't add value to what is already there. So that just to take that on board. But all of the other councils that have done more substantive submissions are based on a lot more resource and analysis and information than we have at our fingertips now. It's unfortunate that in probably 2 months' time we would be able to do a much more intensive job. That's just how it is, and that's, yeah. So we're happy to work with whoever to make as much improvements as we can, but it's not possible to actually provide a high level of improvement without substantial more time, particularly if it is just about the opinion of councillors and the knowledge that you carry in your head about the region. And it's probably not what I would say is good policy.
Thank you, Anne. Alexa.
I can understand your position there, Anne. I just wonder how we got to points 1.11 and 1.12, given there was nothing in the consultation questions that asked us to have an opinion on how New Zealanders as individuals might contribute to positive climate change solutions within their own lives. And we seem to have made a thing of it, like we think that is a very important thing compared to some of the higher level stuff that we can do.
So, sorry, Alexa,
I can't do that.
I don't want
to
put staff on
okay.
On notice, essentially step by step through. I'd rather we clarify our position. We're asking for a more fuller, different formatted submission. We need to say that, and we need to say what we're actually asking staff to do. So that and I was hoping that an additional motion that may just pick up on those points, but.
Well, we're hearing that that it's not possible to do anything, is actually what I'm hearing. We don't have the information to do anything, but we still have put in a position that possibly we don't have to put in. That makes us look like a bunch of lads. Thank you. We're okay with that?
So you haven't got an additional motion?
You're okay. Except to remove clauses 1.1 and 1.12, 1.11 and 1.12. I can talk about us.
Right. Okay, and you've sent that through to us?
No, I had that one up there.
Oh, excellent.
Follow the
Sorry.
direct format and to remove, let's add to that, Liz, follow the direct format, even if it is just support, that is, I think, more valid than what we have now.
I'm happy to second that motion.
I'm happy to move that. You moved it earlier. That was the one I foreshadowed.
So we're just currently talking about the additional motion. So it's moved by Alexa. I'm happy to second it. We're just dealing with this.
Hold on, this is that one below.
Yes.
Is what I suggested, and it isn't necessarily what Alexa wanted, although she spoke after me and said something about it.
Okay. So,
Below one.
Yes.
so
Oh, that's what I sent through to
Oh,
Liz.
well, that was the ones I had.
Oh,
shadowed.
perfect. I'd rather send
So,
it through to Liz.
we'll go back 2 steps. Hope you're okay with this, Alexa. Helen, are you happy to move that
I'm
motion?
fine with it.
That's the one that I understood when I.
Which says direct staff to follow the direct format with the knowledge that we have now within our strategic directions and existing plans. Moved Hillary, second Alexa. Okay. Gwyneth, you were going to say something before. You're comfortable? Kevin, question?
Just wanted to know where we're at with 1.12, and that I recall that 1.12 was one of the most discussed points at our workshop, and that it was following the wise response scenario that all communities can go and do what they like, but we need to get things done on an individual basis. So I actually find that to be a very important editor to the whole argument. So.
Yeah, thank you. Any further discussion? Sorry, this has taken a little bit longer than
Just doing one, I agree.
hoped for, but I think we're there.
Are we doing all four?
Okay, so we're dealing with the bottom motion here at the moment. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carries. And then we go back to the substantive motions, 1, 2, 3. Happy to move from the chair, seconded by Michael Deaker.
That number one should refer to the.
Yeah.
It shouldn't say
Okay,
the direction from here.
okay.
It has to be rearranged.
The direction from council,
Um,
or the direction from,
Well, one should be number one at the bottom.
Yeah.
Shouldn't it?
Just replace it.
Just replace that one, but, or number two. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, just number,
Yeah,
just
just
number
replace it.
one. Get rid of this.
that's what you mean?
Get rid of that.
And I don't, two, we don't, the workshop can't make a direction, I'm not comfortable with that one at all.
Which is gone now anyway.
Yeah, and so the next one has to take that direction out. Yeah,
Yes.
that's fair.
Okay, so we only need to deal with number 2. We have to move.
So does that? Yep. So that thing at the bottom is not councillor Moon, councillor Deaker, it's,
Can we get a copy when you're finished?
Any further discussion
Can we get a copy when you're finished?
Of the submission.
Yes.
Circulated, yes.
1 minute.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against?
Yep.
It's against. Do you want that recorded?
Yep.
I better do that again because I only heard one aye from Carmen. Although this is
She should only have.
this is number 2.
She did last week.
All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Yeah.
Against.
No.
Both want, yeah, obviously Kevin wants it recorded. Gary, you want that recorded?
So,
Thank you all.
And Michael.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, Gwyneth. Thank you, Anne and Warren. Moving on. Did someone suggest a short break? Well, let's keep going. We'll,
yeah, it's good. God, it's only 2:29. We need a break after an hour and a half. Come on, guys. It'll be an earlier beer.
no, just knuckle down. Come on.
Exactly.
Moving on to item 7.4, the RMA Section 24 monthly report to the Minister. You're well aware of the reasons why we're reporting to the Minister. This is the third progress report to the Minister for the Environment in accordance with Section 27, the Resource Management Act, in relation to the recommendations made under 24A of the Resource Management Act. The first reports were provided to the Minister on the 30th of April and the 31st of the first 2 reports 30th of April and the 31st of October, so we're reporting on a 6-monthly basis. Questions first, and then we'll go to debate. Michael Laws.
I'm pretty sure that the last time I asked this question and the last time we submitted one of these reports was, did we get a response back? And the answer was no. Have we had a response back now?
Well, we've had...
No. Let's clarify this, Marion. We didn't get a response back to our last one, did we? No, we haven't.
We haven't had a written response.
So after we submit these,
we had a face-to-face meeting with Minister Parker 3 weeks ago, something like that, which covered all the topics that are in the update to him. He was in town. He had time to catch up. We perhaps spent an hour about that. Yeah. So we haven't had a written response, but we've had a conversation with him.
No response.
As Sarah has just said, if he's not interested and is not communicating with us, that's actually a good thing.
No, it's just that the reason I asked that question, it's exactly the reason that I asked it last time. We submit these reports, we spend quite a bit of time, in actual fact, I imagine our staff submitting them, making sure they've got it, they send it. And I guess you could take the view that no news is good news. So that's great. But the other part of me is going, yes, but I'd quite like to know, as anybody would, is this meeting your request? Are we doing it the right way? Is that all the information that you require? And at the moment, it just seems to be going into a Greek's ether, and I'm going, shit, has it even arrived? Has it disappeared somewhere? We know that it's been received.
Yes, we always get it.
You got to acknowledgement that we've done it. Yeah. It's just gone to some junior minister who's some junior. Sorry, not wouldn't go to a minister.
Actually, we'll just have one at a time, and I'll just ask Sarah to respond to the questions that Michael Laws has raised.
It's a fair
and then we'll just try and tidy part of it up and go back to questions.
The process is that we send a copy of the report electronically, and we always hear back from his office that they have received the report. I guess there's two things I'd say. One is I think it's probably a positive that we don't hear anything. And certainly with the discussion that was had with him, it was a positive discussion. So he seemed to have I don't want to put words in his mouth, so these are my words, but a growing confidence in what's being delivered.
Well, that's good to hear. That's the sort of thing you'd like to get back, isn't it? That kind of stuff. I've got a growing confidence in what you're doing.
Any other questions? Or would someone like to move?
What about let us go beyond questions?
Well, if we've got a motion on the floor, we'll go to debate.
Okay.
So
Happy
to move, and these are the three recommendations. Have I seconded?
Yes, please.
Thanks, Marion. You want to speak, Carmen?
No, I don't.
Okay. Marion?
It's a very full report, very detailed. If I were a minister, I'd be very pleased to receive it. I mightn't write you a letter saying so, because it would just be formulaic. But what is here is, and can I just say, it fills my heart with warmth, because the detail of the work, it's been so much work. And I've sat in the back of the Environment Court Plan Change 7 listening, and it's been quite fun. I'm really pleased with all the progress that has been made, considering it was such a dire time and since delays were proposed to it. So I'm delighted with the progress that's been made.
That's just about
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I've also found the report really insightful. You know, if you want to find out what the council's up to, read this. You know, like in some ways, in terms of my earlier comments in the LTP, it sort of helped form those that, you know, there's certain areas we're doing really well. seems to be policy and regulatory, getting their tools, everything in line. But I still believe, you know, just reading this, you know, in terms of stuff on the ground, building on science, you know, putting a certain amount of money into catchment groups, getting a strategy around that and actually delivering the material again that Park is after. I still believe we're a bit light. Obviously, there's the integrated catchment work and their LTP and there's plans ahead. I understand all that, but I'd just love to see the organisation just sort of moving more in terms of that direction. And maybe I should have asked it under question time, because I've noticed this sort of sneaking into some of our discussions where it says right at the end, it says, this supports the deliberate shift to ORC staff taking a more proactive approach to providing advice on intervention methods. And, you know, I'm just interested to know like where we stand on that. You know, giving advice is you know, specifically to one-on-one farms and so forth when they ask for it. It's been something that we've been pretty reticent about. You know, like
316.
Sorry?
Sorry, Bob, just that one. Thanks.
Oh, okay. Giving advice, and my personal view is that we shouldn't be giving advice per se. What we should be doing is education and stuff like that, you know, telling generally about the best practice around the area and so forth. In terms of actually advising a particular landowner or a company or whatever in terms of what they, you know, it's fraught. They're inevitably going to get it wrong. And you know, we're going to be like Councillor Laws, you know, waiting for the minister to give some feedback on our report to see whether we've got it right. You know, we need to take responsibility for our report. Landowners need to take responsibility for their land. And we're part of that. We need to up our game in terms of general education.
I don't think anyone would disagree with what you've
Yeah,
said
but it's
there, Brian.
sneaking into, not just here, but I actually hear it out and about.
Well, can we,
Sarah.
so just to address that, you'll recall that previously staff had a carte blanche, you cannot give advice.
Yeah.
And that wasn't helpful either, because we had very unsatisfied customers, if you like. So we've had an ongoing conversation with staff, which is, you know, there's a number of ways you can do things. Education is definitely one.
Yeah.
Engagement is definitely one, just having a conversation. But also, you don't want to get to the point where you're providing advice where you would say, for example, if you put that hay bale in that place, you will comply. But you can say, look, you know, your neighbour up the road's doing a really great job and having some success with X, you might want to have a look.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's more the way that we're approaching.
Yeah, that's education, that's not advice.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean when I'm talking about advice, because you're right, there are ramifications for saying do that thing and you will comply.
Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies, Anita, for not welcoming you to this agenda item. You've heard a bit of comment as the author of the report. Have you got anything to add?
No, not at all. I'm just listening and I'll do whatever is required at the end.
Excellent. Thank you, and thank you for a full and concise report. Hilary.
These are 6 monthly, another one, or whatever. Would it be possible for us to receive a draft of the report, or the report be presented to council as a report to us prior to that September thing? I mean, a couple of people have made comments that it amounts to a version of, well, this is interesting, it's good to know what we're doing. And it would be good if we knew, you know, rather than just our obligations to the minister, could we know before that, so as we could actually reflect on what we've been doing and be updated ourselves before this process? Is that something that could happen?
Gwyneth?
I guess if you're referring to
So we just do these in normal council paper times, if that makes sense. We just make sure we get to the right council. In terms of the monthly report, if you're saying could we do it a week earlier and circulate it distribution for your information before we put it into the council pack, I don't see why not.
Yeah, I'm sort of seeing it as a report to us about how we're going, separately from that this is about to be a report to the master. So I'm just saying it's quite a useful report for council to have as a 6-monthly briefing about what we're up to in this area, as it happens, just because the minister's been asking for it. It turns out that it's actually.
I'd just say this is everything that council does. This is only what the minister asks us to report against. So it's not.
No, but it's actually a fairly thorough report on what we're doing in some areas of council. Anyway, I'm just wondering whether we could have it as a Jay, just heads up of what you're up to.
Sorry, just before we go any further, we're midstream in a debate and we've gone back to a question, and I know Sarah wants to respond. So let's just allow Sarah to respond, and then let's finish the debate and the motions move. Sarah.
I'm slightly. I just don't want to make extra work. That's really the thing that I'm thinking about. The other thing I would say is I would be fairly certain that you get a version of most of this information in a number of things that you're getting now. The regulatory update that you get from Richard, the Dean permit information that you're getting, updates, reports to strategy and planning. So there's a bunch of places where this information fits. One of the things I think some of you might be starting to miss or just note is that with the new committee structure, it's not based on function so much like it used to be. So you used to get a transport report or a report on whatever. You don't now, because data goes here and implementation stuff goes here and strategy and planning goes over here. And so you are getting the picture, but you're not getting it all in one place. So I would just say, I'm kind of, with all, you know, I don't want to say no, but at the same time, I'm just reluctant about the extra work it creates, because I do feel like you are getting information. It's just the way that you're getting it and the way that you've asked us to work inside of the committee structure. And also outside of that, actually, when we're emailing you more regularly with everything from transport complaints through to the Dean permit update through to regulatory stuff. It's just coming in a different way.
Thank you, Sarah. Marion.
I wanted to ask of you, Councillor, why would you want something different or the same information a week earlier if you are not going to change it or do anything with it? You still get the information in this. That's what I can't understand. Do you want to change the information?
I'm a little nervous about delving into, I think Sarah has given an explanation about the spread of it's coming through, for example, the 3 different committees when you talk about the type of work that was reflected in the letter to the minister. So the information's there, but it's not obviously compiled in one report to one committee. So we just need to be mindful of that. And there's a really good reason why we adopted that committee structure. So the information's there, but as Sarah's pointed out, it's just not in that one spot. And I think Marion's, I don't think it's going to be beneficial because
As part of the debate, can I say to the staff, what a lovely report it is, and I love it so much that I would have liked to see us having a report like that ourselves, not just waiting for the minister to require. I think it's a wonderful.
I'm not sure whether being facetious is a role of.
I was saying I really like it. It's an endorsement.
Okay, thank you. go to Brian, and then Carmen is your right of reply. Brian.
Has it been moved?
It moved by Carmen, seconded by Marion.
Okay, sorry, I was going to move it, but while I'm talking, I actually had no problem with Hillary's aspiration. You know, like, and it seems to me if it's possible, that it would be good that the report came to us before it went to the minister. Marion said she couldn't understand it. To me, it's a bit like you're a school principal and there's I've got a report card. You could send it straight to my parents, or you could send it to me first. I would actually be quite interested. I know I can't change it, but I know whether I have to leave town real quick.
I did, darling.
Anyway, Brian,
You should know.
I'm really grateful that you've re-litigated the whole discussion. But I think
I changed them. That's what I was worrying about.
Let's move on, Carmen.
I was just going to echo through the chair what Councillor Calvert said. What a wonderful report. I think there's absolutely a marvellous, thorough snapshot of what we're doing. Thank you, Mr. Dawes. We're going 50-50 over here into delving into reports, but that aside, this is very well done.
Excellent. On that note, I will put the three recommendations for their receive a report, approves the third report to the Minister, and notes that the next report will be required to be provided by the 30th of September 2021. I'll put the three recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. And Anita. And for the discussion, councillors, moving on to item 7.5, proposed deed for building consent authority transfer. This is to approve the agreement transferring the building consent authority function in relation to large dams. And we've got, this is yet to large dams to the Environment Canterbury, and council approved the transfer of the building consent authority functions to the Environment Canterbury on the 28th of October 2020. And with us on Zoom, we've got Charles and Joanna. Welcome both.
Afternoon.
So the recommendations are there in front of you. So we'll go to questions. Any questions? If not, Hillary's moving the four recommendations set out there, seconded by Carmen. Receives the report, approves the affixing of the common seal to transfer agreement, subject to Environment Canterbury executing the transfer agreement, approves the variation to the existing transfer agreements with Southland and West Coast Regional Councils to ensure consistency with the transfer of functions to the Environment Canterbury, and approves the affixing of the common seal, the variation to the transfer agreement, subject to Environment Southland and West Coast Regional Council executing the transfer agreements. I'll put those four motions. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against?
Yes.
Gary, you want that recorded? Thank you. Against? Carried by majority. So moving on to item 7.6. This is the Local Government New Zealand Annual Conference 2021 attendance. So there it is just to determine that who is going to attend on behalf of the government's arm, Otago Regional Council. Pretty straightforward. The dates are set out there. And my understanding, Councillor Cates and Kevin had originally been lined up for the AGM during COVID, and obviously didn't happen. And both councillors have indicated they would be keen to attend, and along with myself. So I'm happy to, we can have a discussion about that first if you wish, or I'm happy to take a motion in that to be adopted. I'll go to Michael Laws and then to Brian and then to Alexa.
I don't think anybody will be surprised by what I'm about to say. And I have been consistent on this ever since I've been involved in local government. But I'm struggling to justify to ratepayers attendance at what is essentially a bun fight of local government worthies that achieves absolutely nothing, listens to a whole group of people who are getting paid vast sums of money per hour to say not much that anybody will ever remember.
Sorry to cut across you, Michael. I wonder if we deal with questions and
I'm
then we'll go to debate.
This isn't a question.
It is a question?
Okay, well, here's the question. Okay.
Thank you.
So given those are my views, how much does it actually cost us to belong to Local Government New Zealand a year? Because I don't see it ever put anywhere. And do we actually do value for money audits? And how much does it cost to send people to this particular conference as well? Like, who else do we send? I imagine, Sarah, you go. Do you or not?
Not always.
No, okay. So we only usually send 3 governance people, or we do send 3 governance people plus whoever. So, in other words, what are we getting for this? What's the value? And if you're saying networking, oh, okay. So the emails and telephones don't work anymore. Zoom conferencing has been decided that it was ineffective. What are we getting for this?
Okay, Sarah, this is Amanda's.
No, this is
but this is a governance decision. All I was just going to say, I didn't introduce Amanda at the front end. So, Sarah.
First of all, sorry, can't answer it just cold what the cost is. But what I would say is, I understand the paper is about the conference particularly. At the conference, there does tend to be at times topical announcements. You do get central government attending, some ministers attending, which can be useful. As a broader remark, I suppose, Local Government New Zealand and Solgum, which is now, I forget the new name, but anyway, they have provided a really great conduit for us in a number of places of recent times. And I haven't been part of the sort of rural and provincial sector or the metros, so I don't know how that works. But from a regional sector perspective, I think it's a valuable connection to have. And a lot of the coordinating that gets done around the various inputs that staff have into reform agendas and all of that kind of stuff happens through LGNZ. So I think there's a lot more that LGNZ does for the regional sector potentially than you're necessarily aware of. But in terms of the conference, admittedly, oftentimes it's more geared towards TAs, but you do get ministers coming and at times they take the opportunity to make announcements.
Thank you. Someone was had their hand up over here.
Yeah,
Brian.
but I don't have a question. I was just going to move the motion and enter the debate.
Okay, so you're happy to move that we receive the report, and the second one is that we nominate councillors Wilson, Malcolm, and Noon to represent ORC to attend.
Yeah, definitely. I'm able to speak to that.
And I'm happy to second it.
Look, I understand Councillor Law's frustration. Part of me actually agrees with them, but nevertheless, we may live on an island, but we're not an island, and we do need to interface with their other councils. We're looking potentially at $97 million, per year. This is not a time to put the shutters up. It's actually a time to talk to their other councils, learn from them. And if the entity is inefficient, then we should do something about it. And because we need to work together, we need to collaborate, we need to learn. So I'm happy to move this motion. But I take on board Councillor Law's perspective, because there's no sense going if we can't get some value out of it. So we actually, the 3 that potentially could go, actually need to have that up in mind and actually say, are we just going to follow people around, or are we going to go there to get some outcomes?
Thank you.
And for example, I would expect a written report from anybody that goes actually highlighting the value that they actually get, and so that there'll be a bit of focus. Sorry about that, guys.
Thank you. And what I can recall, I remember Councillor Hope Carmen presenting a written report when she attended with Steve Woodhead, Chair, Woodhead. I can't remember who the third member was. This is some years ago.
Councillor Roberts, who also provided it.
Thank you. Thank you. The sub is 41,000 per annum.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hilary, and then Michael Deaker.
Was that suggestion that there was another part of the motion that said, and those people brought back to a particular meeting? I would, if not, I would like to add that. Yes, yes, I'm only, the thing about a report is that we expect it to a particular meeting, and if we move that now, then it would be on the agenda for that meeting, which would, to me,
Okay, would you like, Hilary, just to add under 2 that that we report back and not actually say any particular, but we report back.
Well, I'd say
to council, I suppose.
To the next appropriate meeting after you come home or whatever. I don't. No?
Just leave it a little bit.
We're
going to
don't say when or where you've got to.
Okay. Sarah's suggested that we report back to the next governance and communications and engagement.
Excellent. Yes, just so that it puts it on the radar and on the agenda.
Okay. So you move that amendment. Someone to second that amendment. Carmen.
Do it anyway.
I'll put the amendment. It's about reporting back. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carry. Apologies, Michael. I went back to you. You possibly wanted to speak to that amendment. However, are you comfortable?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So we go back to.
Nice chairs, I far better than that.
We'll go back to the substantive motions. So the 2 there receives the report, nominates Wilson, Nelson, and Noon. I'll put both of those. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against?
No.
Carry. You want that recorded?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we might just keep moving on and deal with another item or 2 before we break. So this is the late paper that the delegation's COVID-19. So this is 7.7. This is for the COVID Recovery Fast Track Consenting Act 2020, hot off the press. The report seeks to amend Council's delegation manual to provide delegation to make nominations on membership of expert consenting panels for projects being considered under the COVID-19 Recovery Act 2020. Welcome back to Joanna. Anything you wanted to add, Joanna?
No, just take it.
Got that?
Which one? Oh, here it is.
Take it as read, thank you.
Thank you. Questions? No questions?
No.
Oh, we were going to, oh, sorry. We've got a hard copy, we'll just circulate before we go any further.
What's this one, mate?
Okay, good. Sarah, would you like to cover off the paper? Thank you.
So look, basically, under COVID provisions, there is now a fast tracking consent process. It's run out of Ministry for the Environment and the EPA. For those things that are in our region, we get asked to provide nominations for potential hearing commissioners. There are no delegations in our delegations manual to cover this off, obviously, because it's a new case of legislation. So we want to basically asking that that you delegate to the chair to make those recommendations, because they need to be done quite quickly. So there's little opportunity for us to have a meeting about it, and basically that you approve the amended delegation that we have written for you in the paper.
Thank you. Happy to move. Second, Kate. Second, Kevin. So the recommendations 1, 2, and 3. Any further comment, discussion? If not, I'll put 3. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank
Moving
you.
on to item 8. These are the recommendations at the committee meetings over the last 6 weeks or so. Happy to move that. Perhaps if we deal with them individually, please. Yeah. So the first one, 8.1, moved Carmen, seconded Kate.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine, it's fine.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm fine. It's
Okay. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Data and Information Committee, moved Marion, seconded.
So, sorry. So for this one, for data and information, could I ask for, at that time, we couldn't refer the groundwater report for the advice, and we're going to amend it, so that's all okay. But we had, in order for that to go to strategy and policy, we need to refer it at this level, because there were some matters on it that I think we wanted to know if we weren't taking any action. The red, those items in red, I think, was how it was. I prepared a motion to sit alongside that as number 2.
It's been circulated to.
Had briefly, and I think I've got a spelling error in it. Advice is meant to have seen it according to the to my right.
Otherwise it's included.
Okay, so we'll just give it a moment or two and we'll have it up on the screen. So.
Yes. Thank you. I remember that when I went over there. Yes, over there too.
You don't remember it, she'll make an addition to your report.
I just did something the other day.
You gave good advice on it.
Sorry, I'm slightly confused, because my paper goes from finance to significance and engagement. Where the bloody hell is this one?
It's the next page over. The numbers aren't right on our diligence, sorry.
3, 5, 3.
Oh, I get you.
Yeah.
Does it make sense to you, Liz or Dane? I wasn't sure who else would be.
There's something coming up on the screen, is it?
Want to add that council refer the report to strategy and planning for advice on where there are issues highlighted in red. What action, if any, staff are doing to rectify the situation? Was that part of the
Well,
original motion?
No, it wasn't part of it. We couldn't refer anything at that meeting because of the delegations in that committee. So if we want to.
So you just make a separate motion.
A separate motion today, on top of, I'll move the motion that's there and then do this as an additional motion. In order that, otherwise, if we don't do it now, then we'll never get this report back to action. I don't know I'm happy for someone else to move it because it wasn't my call at the meeting. I just remember.
Yeah, but I'm happy for that. I'll second it.
Okay. So we'll go back 2 steps. We'll deal with the substantive one first and then we'll go to the new one. Is that okay?
Happy to do both, yeah.
Okay, so you're happy to move both?
And I'm happy to second both.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay. Everyone's understands what we've done there with that second motion?
Are we going to put it on the screen so we can read it?
Sure. No, I think you're moving the data and information as a second.
Yeah,
And then dealing with the second thing.
Yep. They've both been moved and seconded by the same.
Same people.
Yes. And we'll deal with the first one first, and then we'll go to the new one, referring it to the strategy and planning. Okay. Well, it's up now anyway, right? So I'll put the actual resolution that council adopts, the resolutions of the 10th of March 2021 Data and Information Committee. That motion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Moving to the new recommendation.
It should be the report on groundwater, state of environment. Apologies. That was in the email.
And I'm not sure that we can now make a additional recommendation from the data information.
No, it won't be. It's just a subsequent resolution.
So I think the heading is.
No, that's just for me.
Okay.
Council, not the committee, yes.
Question. When you refer to the issues highlighted in red, was that in the actual paper that?
I think it was in the paper. I'm sorry, that's why I sent it around first and some of you commented back. I think it was that we didn't worry about the greens and the oranges, but we were concerned, but yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
The things that were rated red as opposed to orange or green.
Yeah, the traffic light regime, so the areas.
In the table.
In the table, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's in the.
Okay.
This is, it wasn't my district. I wasn't taking full ownership, but I wanted to make sure we covered it off. Apologies, I'll get back to you.
Can we just
We can take-
refer to the actual table number
Table number.
and just flick it through to
Yeah.
Gwyneth, please?
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone's comfortable?
Yeah.
Motion, we'll see it up there. Okay. Brian, sorry.
You know, like I endorsed what Kate's doing there, but my issue is generally any report that comes to the data committee, we should have the ability to make recommendations and to refer to any particular committee.
Sure.
And is there a roadblock there? Is that?
Yes, I'm going to bring back the terms of reference so that you can refer it to another committee.
So you're going to do that? Does
So
that need to be a
the
motion?
purpose intended that, but the delegation in the terms of reference doesn't provide for
Okay,
it.
so
We've had an email.
should we have another recommendation than simply just?
It's in
I
hand.
think,
It's in hand?
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, it's really important.
Yeah. Thank you. All set? I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. I'm going to suggest we have a break and reconvene at 20, let's say 3:30. The reason why I say 3:30 is that I believe Smoko doesn't do it. 3:15. Sorry, the food.
Could we please pass that compliments on to me? That's
To
from
to the ratepayers.
Wayne.
Yes.
Hopefully
No, we're very, very grateful. It's much appreciated. Kate, you just wanted to, in terms of the message
Yes.
to Gwyneth, the clarity around,
Sorry.
we were asking that last decision.
I was somewhat overzealous suggesting all the red boxes where the deeds were, because that was a considerable number. It hadn't been originally my suggestion, so I apologise for that. What I've suggested the amendment should be is that it report back on the discussion and recommendation sections of that section of that report, which gave the actions that were suggested were needed. And that has got, I think, the consensus of the team to do that. It's better wording. So I've just altered that, which I think is the same intent, but narrows down the.
I supply that as clarification of the earlier.
Mover and seconder are comfortable, everyone else comfortable with that,
Yeah.
that update?
Apologies.
Thank you very much. So moving on to 8.3, Implementation Committee Recommendation. That council adopts the resolutions of 10th of March. Implementation Committee moved Carmen, seconded Brian. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Committee, the council adopts the resolution of the March. Regulatory Committee, moved Gary, second chair. Any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Transport Committee recommendations, moved Kate, seconded Alexa. Now there is a recommendation in there from the regional committee about the panel that they're recommending. So is there anything that we need to do other than, because we're noting the, or we're adopting the minutes, oh, the result, we're adopting the minutes, so there's nothing you need to update us on that?
No,
The minutes?
this is the, it is our committee, Regional Land Transport Committee, even though it's got members of all the TAs on it, is a committee of this council, and that's why it comes here.
I just thought we'd go to the next.
The problem is that we have to set up a hearings panel for the hearings of the Regional Land Transport Committee. Submissions close on Monday. They need to have that done and back to the Regional Land Transport Committee to be confirmed by this council thereafter. Yeah, it is a torturous process.
Thank you.
Pardon? It's under your say. I'm being consulted on right now. This is the land transport one, not the passengers transport plan.
The land transport's really important.
I know.
Michael, Deacon.
Tell me if I'm out of order, but could Gavin give us a quick update on the RPTP, where it's at?
You able to do that for us, Gavin? Please come up to the table if you're okay with the question.
Very brief. All right, just want to know.
Yes, RPTP, through Mr Chair, is presently going through a process of targeted stakeholder engagement this week, literally as we speak. We've got different groups around parts of the region being consulted on the material that you received at your workshop a week or two ago. Once that's concluded, we'll bring a report back to the 14 April Strategy and Planning Committee, which seeks your approval of the front end, the outcomes, the objectives, based on the stakeholder engagement piece that's taking place at the moment. And then the process will continue through to the point of coming back to council for adoption in June.
Okay. Just off the back of your head, Gavin, could you just specify who some of those stakeholders are?
It is mostly the territorial authorities at this stage, although anyone will have the opportunity to provide input through the consultation process that follows. But I can follow up with more detail around this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gavin. So 8.5 has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, the motion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Moving on to item 9, Chairperson and Chief Executive's reports, 9.1 and 9.2. Perhaps if we take questions, if there are any, and then we'll deal with the the resolution to receive the reports. Marion?
Two questions. The first is to you, Jen. It's on Stream Waters reform. You say you're presenting an oral submission to the Health Select Committee.
Yes.
On behalf of ORC?
Yes. So if you go back to, I think it was the council meeting in September, I believe, that was an instruction when we had a report on the three waters. Yes, yeah. And just to update you, that didn't happen today because the Parliament had an emergency.
They've got legislation on housing.
Right, thank you. So I was supposed to speak today with Kyle, and so that's been delayed until I think it's the next Monday.
It's Monday.
Yeah.
Second question was about your meeting with Ingrid.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Should we know anything about that, or have you taken a position, or are you just listening?
Okay, so firstly, it wasn't just me. I was invited along to
With other people.
Yes, with other stakeholders. Probably the best way to describe it.
Because it's got bad press at the moment.
Okay, yeah. There's probably nothing to report.
Is this Albury we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, look, the reason why I agreed to go along was very much based on, it goes back to the report on South Dunedin and the future of South Dunedin some months ago when we resolved that we would like to work more closely with the city at a governance level. Staff are obviously, working well together, but from a governance perspective and looking at potential solutions, whether it's mitigation, adaptation, or whatever for South Dunedin, I think we've made it pretty clear around this table that we see our role, or we see a greater leadership role from this council, and that's what inspired me for me to agree to go along and listen. So any contribution I made was very much at the higher level, looking at the issues that extend across South Dunedin and Harbourside, really, in terms of being low-lying and the interaction with natural hazards. So that was really the purpose, I believe. That's the reason why I went along, and also that was my contribution. The Forbury Park is sort of a subset, yes, good, well said, yeah, it's a subset of the big picture. So, yeah, I haven't heard any press, but that's the case. Okay.
There was something in the press saying about it, the idea about houses, special development, and there was quite a lot of letters going back reacting against that. And I just wanted to be careful that we were coming down that line. This is it.
Anything else, Mary?
No, I think it is.
Bryce?
Yeah, I've got 2 points, and they're both the same ones that Marion raised. But, so this Forbury situation, we talked previously about whether we had a position on climate change or not. But, Forbury is potentially a significant opportunity. It's one of the low-lying areas. And I'd love this council to take a position on it. And in fact, I would expect this council to take a position on it. And so my question to you as chair of the CE is, what's the process for that?
It's
bearing in mind that we do all this testing in all the low-lying areas, Tonga Park, all the different parks, and here's this particular park. It's low-lying. Every time it floods, it really gets it, and there's some real opportunities there. One sector of the community see it as an opportunity for housing. I see it as an opportunity for other things. There's a real interface there with the coast, and so I love, whether it's through a paper, for example, coming to this council, but on one hand we say, we went through this process that we wanted to take a leadership position, we expected to, and then we haven't heard anything since. There's not a lot of leadership that I see in that. And the Forbury is an opportunity. I don't like that we've been waiting for these opportunities. One's come along, we're not doing anything. That's my first question.
Yeah, okay, I'll give it a try and answer.
Yeah.
It's a little bit difficult with, when you mention Albury, because it's not in the public arena, essentially, what's being proposed there. So there's currently, we can't really go into detail about what has
No, that's
has
fair
been
enough.
discussed.
So my question is, how does this council take a position, just generally, whatever that position is about whatever, so it's an abstract of debate, but so like, how do we take a position on this non-public important situation?
I think we've already got a position, maybe not politically, but that paper that did come to council indicated that, we should be stepping up with the city in terms of decisions around the future of South Dunedin and Harbourside. We are waiting to hear back from the city once they get an opportunity to discuss that concept. We've formed a position. We believe there's value in having discussions at governance level, particularly focusing on an integrated management plan.
It seems to me their silence is deafening.
Yeah, they have committed to having a discussion. That's all I can share with you, and I'll keep you posted when it happens. It's definitely going to happen, but they've had.
But what I'm saying is, this council signalled that we want to be proactive, and we're not being proactive.
Yeah, but I think this council's also signalled that we realise there's other stakeholders in the future of South Dunedin.
So why don't we invite them to our council?
We can do that if that's the will and wish of this council. I've got no problem with that. No problem whatsoever. Whether that's probably in an informal setting, maybe initially.
These stakeholders.
Sarah, have you got any thoughts?
Well, no, because on both, sorry, I think we're talking about two different things, aren't we? We're talking about the Fulbury proposal, and we're also talking about the engagement with the city.
I'm actually primarily talking about Fulbury.
Okay,
actually.
well, staff have had no engagement in Fulbury, so it's only been the chair's engagement.
Well,
Staff have had
but
nothing.
why not then? Why not? Like, you're talking about a significant low area and an opportunity for different things, and no staff involvement, no governance involvement, no South Dunedin leadership feedback. We just go into these quiet zones.
Yeah.
What's work happening? Well, the CEO said that there's no staff work happening on Fulbury.
Not on the specific proposal that the chair's been involved with. Staff have not been in those conversations.
Look, I think in my view, being able to, I suppose, share with that group, and that they were very much, I suppose, stakeholders in the future of South Dunedin in general. But to I suppose just to share where we're at as an organisation with regards to having a willingness to work more closely with the stakeholders in South Dunedin. That was the message I essentially took to the table. I don't know. I don't think we've got the opportunity to drill down into the nitty gritty here and now.
Not here and now, but I would have expected as a councillor to be privy to discussions with the DCC and also the, Ingrid has put her hand up and other stakeholders to, and I think if you shake the Fulbury thing, a lot of other apples will fall out of the tree in terms of the big picture, because one has to consider the big picture.
Yeah. So first things first, we've asked the city to consider a closer relationship in terms of governance working together.
Approximately 6 months ago?
It was December.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were told, Mayor informed me that in the new year, they would consider a paper maybe February, March, there or thereabouts in the first quarter. So we're there now, but obviously there's nothing to report back at this point. But I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's not about being posted. I'm saying, please, it's an opportunity. We need to be proactive. We keep saying we're being proactive. We're a $100 million organisation based on being proactive, and I don't see it in this example.
I'm not sure whether I can satisfy your concerns here and now, Brian, but I hear you.
Okay.
And I take on board what you've said.
Okay, and my second point, unless Michael wants to talk about something, I was going to talk about the three waters.
Okay.
Or
Can we finish talking about
Okay, South Dunedin, right, okay. Who, Hillary?
seems to me that we need to have, as a group, if we want anyone to take a position on our behalf, we need to have an idea about what that position would be.
Yeah.
And we don't have it at the moment. So I would like to see, and considering that it's not our land, arguably not our circus, not our monkeys, in any real way, I mean, what we would expect to happen at the end of the day, we have now got a role in urban planning, but hanging off the side of that role in urban planning, we should have some position about what that means to us, for us. And separately from that, what we expect to happen at the end of the day would be one of two things. One, that somebody wants some funding or something. And two, that they want a letter of support for example, the DCC to buy some land that the central government's going to put houses on or whatever. I mean, who knows? So, but want our support because it's not our land and it's not our authority. Our involvement is as in an urban planning sort of role. But I think before we go much further, we should actually, as a council, talk about what we would have in a very public fashion, saying this is the sort of things that are our principles, such as that you could take those to a meeting, whatever's going on that we don't need to, isn't public, but you would know that that was what we would stand behind as a, where we saw our way forward. So you could take that with you, and we would have discussed it, because we don't want to suddenly find that everything goes on behind closed doors and then all of a sudden we've got a proposition that we haven't discussed the background, what principles we care about or anything. So could we at some stage have, and I'm not saying that, well, a staff paper would be useful in the sense of this is our role, you know, that we are now charged with urban planning, whatever it is, and what role we might have in that. And then we can talk about what our position is, because is that possible? That's sort of was intended to be a question.
What I'm hearing is that you want to know more about, what's potentially being discussed out there in South Dunedin, and particularly the focus on, adaptation or mitigation, and our involvement in, I suppose, sharing the data that we have, particularly obviously natural hazards. That's a role and responsibility that we have.
Like we were involved with Becca and doing the should you put a wall around South Dunedin sort of stuff. But not just South Dunedin, I'm talking about the principles that would apply, and it would apply for Forbury, but it would also apply in other places about what our role is.
Exactly, it's about a position. It's not just about data. It's actually we're apparently in December we wanted to be in a leadership role, and there's all this stuff going on. We need to have a position. And I agree 100% everything Henry said.
Okay, we'll look at like a staff paper to cover off.
But we might not be able to be some sorts of leaders because it's none of it. So we need to know clearly what is our business and what we could choose to do.
And that mightn't be a paper. It might be just meeting with the DCC.
Yeah, well, that is going to happen, Brian. I can't say anything more other than it will happen. I don't know exactly when, but it will happen. Okay. So you happy that I'll discuss with Sarah and Gavin about the best way to pick up on this conversation and take us to the destination we're after, which is obviously we want to show greater leadership
and to give you something to go on so you can confidently say this is what we think about what is it.
I'd appreciate that. No problem. So South D, any other South D?
No. Three Waters.
Oh, so just put Michael, you're not South D?
No. Okay. Although I propose a different solution for you. We're having discussions. I would take a couple of Dunedin councillors with you, Andrew, and then you might find that
they attended the meeting.
Yeah, came with you. I'm just saying that it might protect you too.
Brian, back to you.
Thank you. Three Waters. So your oral submission, like this is really an important issue. Three Waters impact on TAs and services. You know, I was talking to Michael Laws earlier, you know, debt, community debt, conflict democracy, health outcomes in our role. So what does your oral submission, what are you going to say?
Good question. It was going to be compiled sometime between last night and this morning, but because it was essentially canned, the opportunity to speak to the select committee.
Yeah.
So we haven't actually finalised a submission as such.
Okay. Do we have
we've got a background paper. We've got a background paper that came to council some months ago.
Okay.
And that basically says that we were to submit an oral submission, you know, when the opportunity arose.
We asked you to speak.
Correct.
And in that motion,
There was
we
a
asked you to
resolution.
speak to
Correct.
the
So,
resolution, yeah.
so it'll be based on that background paper that we have.
Thank you.
Can I just?
Three Waters?
Yeah. This is starting to get problematic. And that would be putting it mildly at the moment. I think our submission goes something along the lines of we're happy to play a leadership role. So, and regional councils are anticipated to play a role. Role of TAs though, God. Can I just share something with you that was, you went to at Carmen and so did Andrew at Wanaka last week. And this is where the rubber hits the road. The investment needed to maintain and enhance water infrastructure, those figures should scare the crap out of you. Over the next 30 to 40 years will be in the order of 50 to 90 billion, but the total investment that the government says is required, because it's so far behind the 8 ball TAs in terms of making that investment, is 110 to 170 billion, and TAs have only budgeted for 45. There's your figure. And I'm a bit concerned, and I think we should take a more active role, Sarah, in this, and that means just, I don't know how we're going to do it, but somewhere along the line, there is a disaster waiting to happen, and I'm not sure if that disaster is going to be TA made or the reaction to what the TAs have done. I remember well the health reforms of the early 90s, and I remember the disaster that they were and still are to this day, the lasting impacts of those dreadful reforms and the setting up of new bureaucracies and new civil servants, but no increase in health outputs. Well, I'm a bit concerned that we're heading the same way here. Now, all those who attended Wanaka, but all throughout New Zealand, are frustrated because they don't have any information to be able to make the decision. And all I'm saying is, I said to you earlier in the day when on the long-term plan, you know, we need to be a little bit more, I can't say proactive because that's the wrong word, because it's hard to do it when nobody's made any decisions. But I think we need to be much more in the moment on these water reforms. And I'm not sure we are, but then I think there's not much for us to do at the moment. It's mostly TAs, but I'm just saying there's some crap coming our way and we need, I think, to have a bit of a scope, almost a sort of a risk analysis of what's in it. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't know that we are intending to play a leadership role in this, are we, or not?
So,
and what, as in what are the views of the Otago community, what would we like to see?
Sarah.
Right, well, I mean, at the moment, it's a discussion that's very much focused on assets and debt. So we don't have any, basically. So it doesn't mean to say that we're not playing an active role. We're actually playing an active role in a number of spaces. So first of all, I'm on the National Steering Committee as Gavin is now on a technical working group looking at stormwater particularly, which is just new. Gwyneth has also been involved and has been meeting regularly with the Otago Southland group that are working on what Otago Southland looks like.
We charge them.
So that was the response, the request for information response. That's all been coordinated through the Mayoral Forum. But Gwyneth's our person on that. Mariana, of course, is involved in that. Andrew and I meet with the Mayoral Forums on those discussions. There is on the 30th of April, I think.
Yes,
I can't go, you're going to the South Island conversation. I'm also on the communications subcommittee for the Three Waters National Steering Committee. So it's kind of difficult for me because I'm playing a, regional sector input. So I represent the regional sector. It's mostly a TA conversation at the moment, but I can't share everything from the steering committee. Although I would say Wanaka.
You see, there's lots of reports.
Yeah, Wanaka got a lot of where the current thinking is at. So, and actually there was quite a lot, I thought, because they did polls all the way through the session, and there was quite a lot of alignment. So on the number of entities nationally, on what people were thinking. So I didn't think that was too bad. As you know, it's still, it used to be you had to opt in for the first tranche. So that happened, everybody opted in, then the RFI came out. Now that's kind of flipped around and you're either, you're in if you don't opt out.
RFI?
Request for information, which was substantial, but I think it's given everybody a really rich experience, both collecting information and the analysis of it, which hasn't come out entirely yet. So I think we are engaged, certainly from a staff point of view, and then it was great to have the attendance at Wanaka as well. But in terms of what is our role, that's kind of tricky because at the moment we don't have one particularly, except I think the in for us is stormwater, because that's quite a different proposition. So the stormwater, the relationship to roading, the relationship to environmental outcomes, pipe streams versus open channels, all that kind of stuff, that comes into the mix.
But wastewater is as essential as our job is. I mean, it's a critical determinant upon the environment.
Yeah.
Surely regional councils, are we still intending, well, from the thinking that's there currently, is it still intended that regional councils both set the standards and implement them?
As the regulator.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's as I understand it. But as I said, that's not really the conversation. The conversation is debt and assets and going into entities. So there hasn't been a lot of conversation around the edges, except to say that there are a whole lot of assets that need consent renewals around the country, and that's a emerging issue in terms of how you manage that.
You're talking wastewater in particular?
Yeah.
And sorry, just before we go there, and also the figures, the variance with those figures that you quoted, the billions of dollars, there's a lot not known about the condition of structure on the ground.
Oh gosh, yes,
the
you're
Three Waters space. So it's scary. Marion.
It's just about ORC leadership, because I think there is some politics in that as regards to TAs. If we go into heavy in leadership, we will be resented and there'll be a pushback. Because we've played that role, which is rightfully ours, of monitoring water, we took out a council, didn't we, and charged them, and they've had to pay a monumental fine. And so there is I think it's a very go gently, keep involved, particularly through the Otago Mayoral Chair Forum, as a way, we've got to keep the speed and pressure on. Because you, Michael, referred to the hospitals. We've just seen Waikouaiti. There's something happened around here the other day. There is what happened in Clutha. There was something that happened in Alexandra last year, or last Christmas before last. We have it's no Otago. You can replicate that, go Wellington, go Auckland, hundreds of times, and there is a frustration, I would say, in central government that you're responsible for water. You've delegated it, and people, rather than put up the rates, have not looked after the infrastructure. And there goes a real problem. If you take water away from them, then you have a problem. And why am I talking? Because I do go to Wellington and I do go to the Local Government Policy Council, and that has been discussed there. That's a mix of TAs and regional councils. The CE of Christchurch is talking about, are there other roles if you take water away that councils can play? So there is a desire to keep councils and local democracy alive and well, but dear God, they've got to find the money or find some way of getting the money to be able to do what needs to be done for water.
Yes. And just so you know, Satya is on the future of local government group that's having that conversation. So the CE of CODC is on that.
Yeah, but can I just flag now though, all the TAs are in different positions.
Yes, they are.
The CODC has no debt. It's built its infrastructural assets with the existing ratepayer base. The DCC has the kind of debt that would send me to, well, if I was mayor, I just couldn't sleep. And there are other TAs like that around New Zealand as well. So there will be some TAs that go, particularly those with no debt and assets that are relatively up to speed. It'll be cheaper for us to stay out. And CODC could legitimately make that at the moment. They're in a good position, but there are a lot of others that aren't. All I'm just asking from our point of view is, this is a very difficult situation for you, Sarah, because you're getting some of the inside thinking, but we're trying to work out what is our role in this future. And
can we just explore that? Is our role in enforcement and compliance in this future?
Well, it is now.
So nothing
I know,
changes.
but it will become.
Yeah, so as I understand it, I mean, obviously you've got the Water Services Bill and the piece that they will do around drinking water for the most part at the moment. But for the next 3 years, there's certainly not going to be any change to the delivery of services from TAs. That was said in Monica. So certainly that's our role at the moment. There hasn't been a huge conversation about compliance enforcement, all that kind of stuff. Like I said, primarily it's more looking at, you know, what's the business model and, you know, assets and debt and how that would transition or not. That's more the detail that's being worked through at the moment.
Can I ask another question? Yeah.
Then I'll go to Hillary.
Oh, sorry.
I'll go to Hillary first and I'll come back to you.
It's all the same subject, I'll come back to it.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the same subject as well. I'm just brought back to me, like earlier I suggested that we get a report back on the people who go to the London Local Government Conference. Marion's just reminded us that she goes to something which I haven't heard have any reports back. We have reports back regularly. I don't know how often.
I don't represent ORC there.
Oh, okay.
I represent myself.
Oh,
But I will certainly write reports to be like.
No, that's fine. But that's,
I think in fairness, if we're attending something on behalf of
yes, no,
this
that,
organisation, there's an expectation that we'd be reporting back if you're doing something in your own.
yes, no, that was
Your own time.
Yes.
Certainly not an expectation.
no. I thought it was part of our.
Where are we going? Alexa?
I'm just wondering, are we kind of I'm just looking to that future, do we kind of end up being the regulator enforcing the actions of a new government agency? Won't that be kind of a weird circular thing?
Actually, it's the other way around. Government agency is delivering.
Michael, hang on.
We regulate them.
Michael, please.
Sorry.
Sarah, question was for Sarah.
But, yeah, I'm just trying to get it because we don't own those pipes, but we
Yeah.
have to watch out for the source water and we have to keep people honest on their pipes.
Yes.
But if they're all,
yeah,
how does that work with that central agency? What does that future look like for us?
So Taumata Arawai, they will have regional offices, and they're looking at opportunities to co-locate. So, you know, can they co-locate with us? And I've said I'm open to looking at that. Pardon? I don't know. We'll worry about that later. But I think there's an opportunity in that. So, you know, we'll look at that. Their mandate is pretty clear, and initially is really around drinking water and getting those supplies registered and making sure that they have action plans, safety plans, I think they're called. And their mandate was initially thought to be quite small, and it's growing and growing and growing. And so, you know, they've got a much bigger job on their hands than they thought they did initially, unless something changes in the water services bill. And then, to the best of my knowledge, we will continue to regulate the you know, the wastewater discharges, source water, still have source water responsibilities, those sorts of things. So I think we'll need to have quite a close relationship. If you think about it at the moment, when we have an issue, it's kind of it's like a three-way sort of relationship, because it's us, we might have a source water issue, so it's us, it's the TA as the supplier quite often, and it's health. And so the health piece is the piece that the drinking water services bill is trying to address. Yeah.
Thanks for that. A little bit clearer.
Yeah. Yeah. It is really complex. Yeah.
And the other message that came through, Monica, was it's still an evolving process.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Karen.
No, it's all right. She was just going to ask you, John speaking to Australia myself. Yeah,
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, his biggest worries is the potential of losing staff from his district to the hospital rebuild, and probably the Three Waters. That's biggest
Well, it
concerns
hasn't
are.
exactly advanced the case of local control.
No, yeah.
And the other thing, Chair, you've pretty clear that you've sent to us. But the one I'm unsure, the last one talks about the weekend.
Oh, yes.
Forgive me, I can't find an address. Where is it raining?
Sinclair, Sinclair.
Tiaka.
Sinclair.
That is-
Sinclair, thank you.
I just wanted
And,
to-
yeah, the Waihole, neck of the woods, yes, yeah, not St. Clair, sorry.
It's a Inukura or.
It was
or
both.
Matamata jobs.
Simply Williams?
It was both, I think.
I think we've got scroll plan one.
Oh,
Scroll crane is the third letter.
Yeah, so that was.
That's the third letter.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah,
Separate. So
Yeah, that's
so the one with Waihola, Sinclair one was Otakau Reno. The scroll plane was from they call themselves Tiako Maniatato Incorporated. Yeah.
Sorry, I was a bit confused by that.
Okay, any other queries, questions?
No, that's right.
That's all good. And Sarah's report, we're happy to, so if we move the chair's one, that we receive the report, okay, second, Carmen, any further discussion?
No.
I'm sorry, I had, sorry, a question with Sarah.
Okay, we'll deal with Sarah's.
Oh, sorry,
next,
that's
yeah, no?
it, yeah.
Yep. Put the motion, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. moved Hillary, seconded Carmen, and there's a question from Alexa.
I'm wondering, Sarah, where we're at, I see you had some meetings with Alan Fleming around Jobs for Nature, and I'm wondering where we're at with that. And what is going on, given that we've now got Southern Sanctuary who's lost their 8 million 2050 funding.
I can't share everything that that I know. What I would say is that I had a meeting yesterday evening where the group met that can decide on applications up to $1 million, makes recommendations to ministers over that. And as a consequence of that meeting, we've now allocated all the funding. Yeah. So I think off the top of my head, there was about 24 million that came to Otago Southland, and that has now been allocated on paper, if you like. Obviously, there's some process to take place. There's some further work through with applicants, and there's also recommendations to ministers because some of the funding is, over the $1 million cap.
Supplementary. What's happened to the alliance? I thought the alliance has been broken up, but clearly there's still something going on. You're still talking. Yes,
no. So the alliance, which was the Jobs for Nature Alliance, no, that has continued. There's been a couple of layers of things. So Gavin was on a sort of advisory committee that sat underneath, and then I was on the governance committee, if you like, making the recommendations and decisions. Gavin's committee's kind of petered out. It was the last meeting of Jobs for Nature Alliance yesterday. The proposal being that from here on, we transfer our energies into the Mirihiku regeneration proposal. Yeah.
Which means what?
Yes, I'm happy to talk to you about that as well. Yeah. So Mirihiku regeneration is talking, so I'm involved, well, I was invited to the first workshop, which is about the environmental hoe of looking at that regeneration. And as I understand it, so this comes from Tātipini and people working with him. And as I understand it, the idea is that from Waitaki South, that's Mirihiku, that's what it would be taken, and it's looking at how we are going to respond to some significant change inside of Otago Southland in the next little while, and ensure employment and opportunities are taken up for redirecting people to other options around employment. So I'm part of the environmental piece. It was an initial discussion really talking about the work all of the agencies are doing and potential opportunities that we might see for generating employment, how that links with training. So it's actually not too dissimilar to the kind of conversation that's happened around Jobs for Nature. But the impetus is really pending closure of TY and obviously post-COVID, but also, just the changing landscape for us in terms of the economy and what things look like in terms of training and employment. So that's about as that's it kind of in a snapshot. There is another meeting that they're working on planning for another couple of months. But at this stage, it's myself, Rob from Southland, so the CE from Southland, the iwi leads and their support, LINZ and sort of government agencies, I guess.
Thanks for Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Michael D.
That was my question.
Carmen.
Thank you, Mrs. Gardner. We had to leave for 3 minutes, Lex and I And Tina, and I'm just sorry to put you on the spot, but I was just wondering, you were going to talk that day, and I know you did talk. So what did you actually talk about? If that's okay, you don't mind.
Yeah, no, one of the things, really what I talked about was, look, it's complex, but actually local government generally has a lot of challenges right now and more coming. And so it's really important that we don't, this is not very eloquent, but we sort of don't get too distracted by Three Waters and put all our eggs in one basket, because actually REM reform is, Three Waters is huge. REM reform is like a mountain on top of a mountain, if you like. That's the way that it's being described. And so I suppose what I encouraged was people to narrow down their concerns or issues to get them to a place where they at least know what sort of direction they might want to head. Because if you try to focus on the whole big picture without that kind of sense of, I think we're going to go in this direction, I think it's just so huge and you could get really distracted. So my encouragement was really to, take the information away, narrow down where your concerns are and where you think you might be heading, and get some certainty around that as much as you can, sort of as quickly as possible, so that you will not you don't miss the bus for the other reform that's coming and the other conversations that are coming.
Right.
Yeah, the 1 year deferral in relation to the winter grazing rules, what it says here allows a bespoke and model to be developed for winter grazing. Is that by us, the ORC, that reference?
No, that work will be part of, centralised. So Richard's leading it from the regional sector.
Apologies. So what are the implications of this deferral for us? Do we know yet? Have we worked that through, or?
Well, primarily for us, what we know is that we thought we were going to have, a range of consents coming in this year, and we're not. We're not expecting that. We had hired additional staff. However, we always, we hired additional staff for freshwater implementation, so it wasn't just winter grazing. Even though we knew the consent load might be big, and we were very deliberate in the way we've gone about resourcing up, so that those staff are working on the implementation of Plan Change 8. They are also able to work on deemed permits, which we've got several hundred in, at the moment, and they can also work on some of the policy load. So there's plenty of work to do.
No, fair enough.
Yeah. And I think, there will be more work that comes along, getting familiar with the module, feeding into that, understanding what the implication will be if the module's up and running, then what is the need for consent or not. So there'll be a bunch of stuff.
Great, thank you.
All set. It's been moved and seconded that we receive Sarah's report. There's no further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Moving on to item 10, notice of motion. In accordance with Standing Order 27.1, Brian has submitted the following notice of motion for inclusion on the agenda for council meeting today. And the motion goes that council requests staff to report back the completion of the LTP process on timeline and resourcing needs for a collaborative development of an Otago Harbour Plan with ORC, DCC, Port Otago and community input. Brian, we're in your hands.
Great, thank you for the opportunity. This is not the first time this has come to this council. In fact, we've actually previously adopted a similar motion. And in fact, our representatives have actually attended some meetings. For whatever reason, it seems to have not taken off. I suspect one of the reasons is that other organisations are expected to drive it. But nevertheless, it's certainly in my mind that we have a responsibility to be involved in establishing the Otago Harbour Plan, ideally collaboratory. And I would also suggest that iwi were involved. is a significant stakeholder and also a stakeholder in our harbour. Look, there's so much going on there. Look, in today's ODT, for example, you know, the local fishermen are saying, Carey, I've been saying this topic for years, you know, Carey's Bay, you know, infrastructure lacking maintenance, and, you know, the Port Otago's perspective being principally a commercial one. We've got this beautiful harbour, we've got infrastructure that's not a plan for, we've got access issues, boats come here, fishing boats going to the, you know, Antarctica, all this type of stuff, and you've got people wanting to recreate, you've got now access with the walkways, cycleways. There's stuff on the harbour that demands some coordination and planning. So personally, I look forward to the feedback if this motion passes in terms of what resources actually required. You know, maybe if it needs to get some wheels, then governance actually gets involved with staff. There might be a councillor with Richard or however it actually works, so that there can be just a bit of pushing, and if everybody plays their role, then we will get there.
Thank you, Ron. I'm just going to ask for a second.
I was second it with the amendment that Evie has said, didn't we?
Yeah. Very happy. Thank you.
Sarah. So I'll just take it. It's been moved and seconded. Moved by Brian, seconded by Kate. Sarah.
It's entirely prerogative to put up the notice of motion. I'm not debating that, but what I would say is if councillors are going to support this, then I'm going to need to know how I'm going to pay for it, how I'm going to resource it. And there's only two ways of doing that, really. One is that you give me more money, or the other way is that I don't do something. And the other thing I would say is I just wonder where this fits inside of all of your priorities, given that conversation today has been had about some of the things that have been parked, to use terminology used today, like air and the coast plan. And if we add this in, I'm not saying I disagree with that. I'm just saying I don't have endless resources. So if you want me to do this, I'm going to need you to give me some extra stuff in a resolution that allows me to actually carry out the function.
Sorry, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. You're asking for a paper from Sarah around the timeline and the potential resource that would be required, rather than actually triggering the process here and now.
No, exactly. It's quite difficult for us. I actually, you know, I don't actually see this as a high resource or financial demand. Not that I'm in Sarah's shoes. You know, some attendance, you know, at some key meetings and so forth, just to keep it alive. Bearing in mind that it will be principally the DCC and the port that'll be expected, but it's just, you know, it needs some framework of accountability. And so I don't see it as a lot of money. We seem to spend a lot of time saying what we can't do, like at about $100 million. I mean, we just talked before about some of the gaps, the delay of deferral by a year. You know, there are gaps, there are opportunities. Cheapest, send governance along if it's that expensive.
It's not just that it's expensive, but literally we've got a packed work program now, and I don't, from your resolution, I also don't know what it is that you're wanting from a harbour plan.
Well, staff actually wrote the resolution, so you might want to ask them. I agree to it. And it was quite actually interesting that it's quite interesting that, you know, from the port's perspective, they were actually quite happy and were encouraging, you know, the harbour master to be a representative. We've now got two harbour masters, so we're not actually talking about getting a new person, or we're just saying, well, you know, maybe our harbour master can attend 2 or 3 meetings as part of his responsibility.
Well, he has done that.
Yeah, well, exactly. So that's the problem.
But our harbour master, to be fair to our harbour master, I think what you're looking for doesn't necessarily fit inside.
And that's why when I spoke to our director, about it, he suggested that.
So I'm not saying no, but I'm just saying priorities,
Anyway,
money, resources, and what is it?
Yeah, I think we need to understand the financial consequences.
Well, that's what the motion's all about, to report back on the resourcing, the cost and the timeline.
And then we make a decision on
Then
whether
make
we
a
take the
decision.
next step.
And my fellow councillor has suggested that the cover, that E would be, name would be put in there.
I'm going to go to Kate in a minute. I'll go to Gwyneth first.
Sorry, I just want to clarify one thing because it actually changes the question about how much the resources are. Are we talking about participating in someone else's project earlier, or are we asking the ORC to develop a plan?
Well, I would actually ask staff, because staff are the one, because governance are not allowed to go to these meetings. You know, because staff have been attending this meeting, so I would actually ask them. But my understanding is that it was principally the DCC that was driving this.
My impression is that the expectation is we would lead it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Oh, well, that's not being
Before we go, I'm going to go to Kate, then Michael.
No,
Marion.
Kate, Marion can go before me.
Okay, Kate, Marion, Michael.
Thank you, very good.
Kate.
Thank you. I'm happy to second this only because I want to understand how much it will cost to kick this off, so that we can consider it in the long-term plan. I don't necessarily think, unfortunately, that will be something that we can afford to do immediately. There is a huge history to this. The last time I know that it came before this council, I don't know if it came around a table, was an invitation for the DCC to have a collaborative plan. I think you may have been sitting at the DCC at the time as I was when that was invited, Mr. Chairman. In the long history, there is actually a plan that was started. I just want some of that background and what it would mean or could mean to assist people. I want a very short document about this is what it would need to get that collaboration, so that people, when they're going for resource consents, get one process and it's an understandable process. I had the pleasure of riding round the harbour this weekend. It's absolutely fabulous asset. It needs and has a huge potential to be developed further now. You've got that seawall and shed path. But that actually needs to have one place, or it makes sense to the community that they can develop more wharfs or picnic tables or whatever. That isn't clear or transparent at the moment. And that's why I'm supporting this motion, that we just get a page of what that might look like. And it's not a huge document. I wouldn't mind a wee bit of the history so we understood it. But this is a tonga of the iwi. It is a huge asset to our Otago region. And at the moment, it isn't at its full potential partly because we make it so hard for anyone in that place, in that space. And that's just legislative. It's not our fault, it is. It's a problem with legislation. And I don't think it's going to make any sense. God forbid what it's going to be like with climate change when the mean high water table starts moving and we have to redecide what point is ours anyway. So it just starts dealing with those issues. So I don't want a big report. I just want something that would give it a place that we can put it in, maybe 2023, 24, and actually start activating it to make some sense for people.
Thank you. So we're speaking to the motion, which includes that the stakeholders include their partners even.
Okay.
Marion.
My only problem with this is trying to do this before the completion of the LTP process. Otherwise, I'm actually really supportive of something, because I have, just in the last 5 days, I was called to a meeting in Port Chalmers of, I'm not saying who the people were, but they were asking for help, and it was city councillors set up the meeting with me and these people. And it was about developments of marina. It was about, because nobody comes into the harbour now. I take all your points about the path, Kate, but this is, there is stuff around the actual berthing. No one comes in, private yachts don't come in. They don't, because there's nowhere to berth. And it is actually a real problem. I want the port to be a vibrant port, but there are people's jobs. The fishing industry, the fishing boats going out of port at the moment are virtually about 80% owned by people under 30. It's a rejuvenating industry. They have quite a lot of problems, again, with marina and stuff. So what I'm sort of heralding is, and I just smiled when I saw that, because I think there has to be, and it has to be collaborative. I'm asking for, I don't know how to do it. Okay, now here's the other thing. We hold resource consents for most of those structures. So this is where it gets really complex. And it's not just us on our own. So I'm not asking you to, at the moment, for staff to go off to have meetings with everybody together yet. I just want to understand, I'm sorry, Brian, if it sounds less than what you're asking for, but an understanding of the process, who should be involved, and what that might cost.
Yeah, well, that's what this is. Timeline and resource.
Okay, speaker is Hillary.
Yeah.
What I particularly like about this proposal is that if people are going to propose something like this, they should be doing it now. They shouldn't be waiting till we've done the long-term plan and then suddenly saying, oh, incidentally, why don't we go and spend a whole lot more money? If we're thinking of spending any money or whatever, or looking at a project, we shouldn't be just kicking them to touch and suddenly coming up with them in August or next year or whatever.
I just worry about time.
I'd rather see something, and I agree with previous people that something succinct, and I understand that if we ask Sarah and our staff to do something succinct, we will get something back that says, incidentally, we couldn't have a proper look at wherever this was going, so I completely appreciate that. It won't. Succinct doesn't mean thorough and looking at all the possible everything, but just giving it a bit of a look to see now, rather than just putting issues off until after the long-term plan and then taking no notice of the process, because this is the time when we are looking at things that should be in our long-term plan, if they could be of any significance. So.
Thank you, Michael.
I think we've all agreed that the sentiment is correct. It's the question of the implementation. So I think we've got that. And Brian and Sarah's saying, well, wait on, it's not in the long-term plan, so where am I going to get the resources from? Well, there's two ways of handling that. The first is, I don't think it takes initially a lot of resources. So and you could actually, this council could set up a working party, give it under the chair of somebody like Brian, and say, off you go. You go and draw up, get agreement in principle from these various people that you will participate in a round robin or a round forum in which you can develop that up. And then you make a submission to the long-term plan. So if you wanted to make this work, Brian, get it going now. It's March. We could set up a working party today, appoint Brian chair, get him to go and consult with the parties that are located here, get an agreement in principle, make a submission to the long-term plan. And then that solves Sarah's problem, if that's what we want to do. We'll decide that when we consider the long-term plan. But for the moment, can I just say, I really love the idea of the IRC providing some leadership when there is a community asset to be developed. It's something we haven't done probably since the formation of the ORC. It's been a reactive organisation, not a proactive one. It hasn't created things. It's tended to act as a regulator and as an impeder in some cases, or as an impediment. I'd like to see this at Lake Dunstan. So obviously, I'd like to see the precedent that's created here extrapolated throughout our region. But the precedent's still a fine one to follow. So off you go, Brian. So I support this. I think Sarah's got a legitimate point. Where am I getting the resources from? Make your bloody working party, go and get your people in principle, get them all signing up. Brian, you can do that, for God's sake. Come back here and say, I need some money. How hard is that? It's not.
Thank you. Michael P.
Yeah, I'm going to support the motion, but it's a perfectly reasonable request. Just as Sarah was perfectly reasonable saying, hang on, just the people with the money. Or even though I started this meeting, I totally agree with Councillor Lewis. I totally disagree.
Why? No, it's the right thing to do. Why can't you do it?
Hang on. All your sweeping generalisations about how this organisation has never led, has never created. Look around the region, mate.
You have
Anyway.
you haven't done anything,
Okay,
Michael.
okay, you two carry that particular conversation.
Oh,
Peter.
listen, he just apologised for the council beforehand.
No interjection. Michael?
It could be, but I don't accept that Brian should have plopped back at his lap, simply because he moved this to go and do it himself to the council. None of us to run our planners. This is requiring the development of a plan.
That's policy.
That plan will have implications for users, and will have implications for enforcement. That's what we want to see, not a wishy-washy, waffly document put together by council. I think we need to get a one-page response to this. Here's how it would happen, here's what it would cost, where's the money going to come from? That's the response I expect to see from the CE or from somebody on the ELT. And that's why I'm going to support it.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other speakers before I go back to Brian? If not, Brian, by reply.
Yeah, no, look, I support what Councillor Becker said, and I take on board what Michael said. I'm actually hoping when staff look at this, that they, in their one pager, they say, well, actually, one way of actually saving some money and getting some traction is to involve governance, so that there will be a governance of it. It might be one staff governance, whatever, going around these groups or whatever. So it shouldn't cost much. It might, you know, that might be one of the ways of making a budget. Look forward to the opportunity. Great.
Can I ask a question then? Can I ask a question of the mover?
Yes.
Thank you. What's an Otago Harbour Plan look like? Because the answer to the question that you've just posed, is that right, Gwyneth? Yes. The answer to the question you've just posed will be, what are you talking about when you talk about an Otago Harbour Plan? So, forgive me.
Okay, well,
it needs a bit more work before we actually get staff to do anything.
Well, I would have thought of, to answer your question, and I'm no expert on the matter, as Councillor Decker says, but the first thing the group would have to decide what the plan actually looks at. One way of actually doing it is actually to set up a map to identify all your assets and all your issues, to talk about things like access, talk about stakeholders, talk about funding, financial maintenance responsibilities, talk about all this stuff, and actually come up with agreements and an understanding over time.
So they're going to do this before the LTP?
So, look, let's just tidy this up. I think the initial paper that we're asking for will give us a timeline and the expected resource, and I imagine that Sarah will turn her mind to, or her staff will turn her mind to, what that scope looks like. And then obviously the scope, once it's a bit of a extra, you know, taking it from one extreme to the other, and the financial associated costs with going full Monty or whatever. So, sorry to use that term, but anyway. So we've got two more speakers to the motion. Brian's has had his right of reply, but because we're in the Waitaki district, Gary.
Well, it's just around the practicalities of this, because fair enough, I understand the motion, great sentiment, whatever, got to do it, let's do it, that's great. But it says before completion of the LTP.
Yeah.
So it's the question of this saying, well, if it's before completion of the LTP, do we want it to influence the LTP? And then, but we've just approved a consultation document and a whole heap of financials that have no bearing, whether they don't include this. So then, we're not consulting with the community currently on this. So I mean, if it's in year 2, year 3, year 4, that's fine. We have flexibility to adjust that and get it right. It's sounding to me like it's going to be far more complex. So let's get it right. Let's do it properly. So I'll support the motion, but not in this current year under that current timing, because I think it's too unfair on staff and what we've approved.
Yeah. Sarah, did you want to?
Doesn't say this year.
Thank you. Look, I'm not opposed to what you're trying to do. I'm really not. But it does make me nervous when we make sort of on the fly kind of decisions, when we've just been through months and months of trying to strategically build a work program and set priorities. And inside of those priorities, we never discussed a harbour plan. So So I suppose all I'm doing is saying, okay, so I've allocated my resources based on the priorities that you have given me. You now want something new, which I understand and I appreciate why.
It's not actually new. It's actually part of the status quo.
Yes.
Staff have been attending meetings on this over the last year or two.
So yes, I have had Steve Rushbrook, who pulled together a group.
And Richard.
And they did do some work, but ultimately it's much bigger than that. So the kinds of things that I understand about the harbour plan, it's not a great understanding, is that there is an expectation that probably we would seek global consent for basically, and take, if you like, kind of quasi ownership of all the structures and stuff to look after them. The port would then, because there's a community expectation that the port's got the dredger, so the port will assist with, community dredging with some kind of global consent. That is some of the conversations that have been had. So it's quite big, in my view. So I'm not, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you don't need a harbour plan or that there haven't been conversations. I suppose I've just treated it like we might not have discussed it, but if it's not in the LTP as we're going out for consultation, rightly or wrongly, I had assumed that you didn't intend for it to be on the table. So that's kind of, and that might be my mistake. So that's
one of the options is actually to get the port to fund any cost. Is to do it the minimal sort of way for a start, and because the port are actually pushing this as well.
Yeah, I can talk to Kevin. I'm meeting Kevin on Friday morning.
And part of the reason, water and all that's the most important. This was part of the machinery. Like, we haven't dived into all our existing machinery. For some reason, this has been dropped.
Well, yes, but I guess my main point is, and what I'm kind of saying to you is, everyone's made some compromises along the way with. Some people want the air plan, some people want the coast plan. Brian's asking for a harbour plan. We've said no to yellow-eyed penguins in what's now proposed. And what I'm saying is, I think there's a danger in looking at these things in isolation without looking at the bigger picture, which is actually we've got a bunch of stuff that we've parked or on hold it or whatever the case may be. Is this the one thing that you want to put your penny down on, or if you were going to spend more money, what else would you do? That's all I'm saying.
No, that's fine. That is in the motion. Talk to that timeline. You might come back and say, actually, this is not realistic.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. This is not a decision about a harbour plan. This is some further information about if we go down the track of a harbour, developing harbour plan, what sort of scope, what timeline, what sort of resource. I think that's where we're at. Kevin.
Yeah, look, and that's what I was hoping we were heading to. So I'm quite comfortable. All I can say about after moving the 2011 Waitaki district or Oamaru Harbour plan that have been that they've been trying to get going for some 20 years, I think it was, before they actually finalised one. It is a long and involved process, but if you go down, when you walk down tonight, you'll see that this is certainly a rewarding exercise to do, and that's a vibrant harbour happening. But what it does require is a champion, and it won't be a staff member. It will be, you'll require governance to actually champion it and get it going. It may be one or two people, and that will be it. But I certainly let's get some timelines and basic sort of things around it. But that plan will take considerable time, but it will need a champion to drive it.
I just have to clarify something that was incorrect that Brian said. This was not prepared by staff. It was one that I gave to him as a discussion because he asked me.
My staff.
Yeah. So on the 24th of February, he did on that date circulate to everyone.
Oh, sorry.
I don't want to believe that anyone thought that the staff had done it, and apologies. I did ask him to do so, but he forgot to. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I apologise if the influence was strong.
Look, thank you for being so honest, everybody. Marvellous. Hey, look, I think we've had a fair crack at this. So it's been moved and seconded, moved by Brian, seconded by Kate, is the additional inclusion of the iwi. And I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. That concludes the council meeting. Thank you very, very much for your attendance, participation. And, you know, like I said at the front end of the meeting, it was really, really good to be in Waitaki District Council chamber today and being in Oamaru. And we look forward to the evening with our council colleagues from Waitaki District.
What time do we meet?
6 o'clock at the
We're going to go walk around the harbour now.
Justina, which is number 2.
Just down the road. Just down on the.
Which is the end of the main street.
End of the main street. Thank you, everybody.